Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1235 of the War News stream. And today we have major news that Britain has begun preparing for a major war with Russia. We've also seen U.S. aircraft spotted near Iranian airspace, and also heavy fighting is escalating in eastern Syria, as we've also seen the Crimean bridge apparently exploded as well on one of the pillars. We have a lot of news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of major breaking news from around the world, as we have been able to hear that overnight Ukrainian armed forces were able to successfully hit and cause significant damage to one of the main archways of the Kerch Bridge over the navigational strait within the region. It does appear that at the moment the bridge has taken some moderate or severe damage to that supporting structure, and that the bridge may be in peril and may be subject to significant repairs as a result of the damage that was caused to the structure overnight. We have also been able to hear significant info that there are now massive battles breaking out around the town of Dier Ez-zour, near to the area of the Euphrates River inside of Syria, as the Syrian interim government forces and the Syrian Democratic Forces are now engaging in heavy conflict. We have been able to hear that U.S. Air Forces and Turkish Air Forces are present within the region in some sort of a supporting role either to the SDF or the Syrian interim government as the battles continue to rage. But once again, making it incredibly clear that the internal situation within the former Syrian Arab Republic is still an unstable one at best, and is continuing to devolve on a near day-to-day basis from this point onwards. Outside of that, we have been able to hear in the Islamic Republic of Iran that there appears to be minimal nuclear activity at the nuclear sites in Natanz and Fordow, as we have been able to see that at this moment, according to satellite pictures and data, that there is hardly any activity by Iranian contractors or Iranian recovery and rebuilding teams, and it does appear that at the moment, the entrances access to the Fordo plant are still completely blocked off by landslides, and it also appears that at the Natanz facility, rather than covering up the hole caused by the Tomahawks or the MOP that was dropped on the facility, there does not appear to be any additional efforts to try and recover the structure. Nevertheless, the Iranian government is continuing to stay steadfast in their statements that they will not be allowing any restrictions on uranium enrichment inside the Republic of Iran, while at the same time, the Russian Federation has also voiced a statement saying that they would agree with the United States if the Islamic Republic of Iran was never allowed to enrich any nuclear materials or uranium. Largely a lie as a statement. But beyond that, we were also able to hear that near to the area that the Russian Il-76 landed in Tehran just yesterday at the Mehrabad International Airport within southwestern Tehran, significant explosions have now rocked out within that surrounding area, possibly coming from the Il-76 itself, although we do not have exact information to be able to corroborate that claim. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that the United States of America is conducting reconnaissance flights inside the Persian Gulf to gather more intelligence and data on Iranian military abilities for possible future strikes, as we do know that U.S. forces are once again repositioning into the Middle East as time continues to pass. Outside of that information, we've also been able to hear that the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has officially stated that they are now preparing for civil defense programs to be kickstarted here within the next following months to be able to build a large amount of bomb shelters throughout the entirety of the United Kingdom in the eventuality of conflict with the Russian Federation, which according to the British government appears to be an inevitable fact of life in the modern Europe at this moment. At the same time, we've also been able to hear that the Germans will soon provide a large amount of vital military aid and equipment financed by the Germans to the Ukrainians here within the next several weeks, as the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to claim significant victories on the battlefield over the course of the day. Ukrainian armed forces have been able to push the Russians several hundred meters back within the small Sumy front, which the Russian Federation has largely failed to conduct as a successful offensive, and we've also been able to hear that Ukrainian armed forces have been inflicting high casualties onto the Russian armed forces near to the Kupiansk battlefield, and have also been able to hold their lines around the Toretsk cauldron. We have also been able to get significant news from around the rest of the world at the moment, including some East Asian news, but the news was actually incredibly large today, and we have a lot of news to cover with each and every single one of y'all. And so, we are going to be moving on into that news, starting off with our first major piece of news within the area of the eastern Crimean Peninsula, and specifically in the Kerch Strait at the Kerch Bridge. The Kerch Bridge is an important structure within the Kerch Strait, connecting the Russian mainland to the Crimean Peninsula, allowing the Russian Federation to not only surge military forces into the Crimean Peninsula at a much faster rate than they could have in the past, relying entirely on the railroad ferries and road ferries, but they also allow the Russian Federation to have a symbolic direct connection to the Crimean Strait in an attempt to legitimize Russian control of the region. This bridge has been a significant target by Ukrainian forces throughout the entirety of the war, and we have seen a large variety of attacks, both successful and failing, to try and take out the bridge. But overnight, while we were not able to get any video or picture evidence of the attack itself, one thing has started to become evidently certain is that the bridge was hit last night, and it was actually hit right here on this specific part of the arch that holds up the bridgeway that goes over the navigational water canal or channel that enters into the area of the city of Kerch and the Sea of Azov further north from the bridge. There was a picture that came out showing us that there is clear powder residue on the structure of the bridge, which you can see right there, and we can also see a large hole clearly indicative of a drone directly impacting the archway and exploding onto it, which may have caused significant damage to the box girder structure that this arch is made up of, and it holds up the very central part of this bridge that is directly hovering over the major shipping channel which passes through this area of the Kerch Strait. This part of the bridge is probably one of the weaker parts of the bridge, considering that the archway has to hold up a very significant span over the shipping channel. The reason why they had to build this significant span is because the Sea of Azov, and largely the port of Kerch itself, is not an incredibly major port, but it is still significant enough that Russian navigational efforts by larger vessels are still conducted heading from the ports of Rostov-on-Don and Azov out into the open Black Sea through the Kerch Strait, as well as from Kerch itself into the open Black Sea and then further beyond. For this reason, the bridge and its shipping channel is incredibly important, and this part of the bridge has been attacked prior as a Ukrainian underwater drone actually exploded somewhere directly onto one of the supporting pillars of the railway railway bridge, although it appears that that attack was not entirely successful in causing enough damage to actually take the bridge down. It did blow away, however, the pretty much the ship bumpers, if you want to call them that are pretty much supposed to ensure that a ship does not directly collide with the bridge's supporting pillars, which that did happen. But beyond that, we were not able to see that the railway bridge was taken out in that attack. However, this attack may be structurally weakening the actual supporting arch that holds up the larger part of the road span, which is directly over the shipping channel. If that is the case, we may see the Russian inspectors will decide to shut down the bridge and try and conduct emergency repairs, which may not last incredibly long, or they may shut down the bridge to try and effect long distance repairs or long duration repairs to actually try and get the arch back up to its full structural integrity. But one thing is incredibly...
It would seem like they would close it down right now, considering that it's clearly showing damage right there to that very crucial arch. The fact they're leaving it open until they decide to inspect it later is really indicative of how unserious the Russians are about safety going over this bridge right here. They don't want to close it under any circumstance because, for one thing, it's a huge propaganda victory for them to keep it open and pretend like nothing ever happened. And number two, they have so much air defense and so many defenses around this bridge. For them to admit that something still got through after all those defenses were put around this structure right here, that's also even a worse embarrassment. So they kind of crazy right there. Now, if this thing suddenly collapses in the water, I'm not sure if it's that serious, but if it suddenly collapsed, that would be a horrible embarrassment, to say the least.
And I see some people saying that it doesn't look like it's extremely significant damage. But as a matter of fact, this is actually quite significant damage, especially to the supporting structure of the bridge. A structural impact like this that starts to directly hit onto the girder-type structure that this arch has can actually start to cause a great deal of stress fractures throughout the rest of its lifespan, and these can rapidly evolve over a very short period of time. There's actually a great example of this, at least within recent civil engineering history within the United States, which is the Hernando de Soto Bridge that passes over the Mississippi River on Interstate 40, which you can actually see right here. This is the Hernando de Soto Bridge, and to really quickly show y'all something, Hernando de Soto Bridge crack. Let me go get this for y'all to actually show y'all the time lapse of this crack and what happened as a result of it. Hopefully I can find y'all a picture of this that was taken for... Here we go. So, way back when the Hernando de Soto Bridge was built, the kind of metallurgical knowledge that we have today didn't necessarily exist, so the steel that the bridge was made out of was actually a little bit more brittle than it needed to be, and as a result of that, you can actually see right there, this picture was taken, I believe, by the state of Tennessee's Department of Transportation, that there was a clear, significant stress fracture that was growing within the bridge, right next to the rivet joints on this box girder structure, which is generally considered to be a point of concern, considering that this is what holds the two box girders together, and there's a decent amount of strain that's put on this bridge because of the high and low periods of traffic changing the amount of weight that this box girder is having to support. This is an area that usually is understood to go under a significant amount of fatigue inside of bridge engineering. For that reason, it's usually inspected quite a great deal, and the Department of Transportation within this area actually did note the massive stress fracture, but stated at the time in a report that while it was something to be observed, it was not critical enough to completely shut down the structure, if I'm remembering the story correctly. Fast forward a couple of months, and the entire box girder actually split in two. The stress fracture and the constant changes and rigors of rush hour traffic, and then the complete lack of traffic through some hours of the day, was flexing the bridge up and down enough that it literally pretty much just wiggled the two pieces of the box girder apart and eventually cracked them entirely in two. And the entirety of the Hernando de Soto Bridge had to be shut down for an incredibly long period of time. I believe that it was shut down up until very recently to try and effect repairs to this box girder and to completely replace it in the structure of the bridge. This is something that can happen with the Crimean Bridge as well. A significant hole like that inside the bridge is completely changing the main stress zones of this part of the bridge. And considering that the Crimean Bridge, much like any other bridge, goes through significant highs and lows of traffic throughout the course of the day, the flexing on the bridge and mainly on this arch itself will start to pretty much wiggle away at the supporting structure here and start to create stress fractures that are either reaching that crater in the side of the girder, or will start to reach out from that hole to the external extremities of the girder. Meaning that while this doesn't look like like a significant hit. Structurally, this could end up being a pretty damning hit for the arch on this bridge, in that they will have to effect repairs. Otherwise, the entirety of the arch could separate from its base structure at the bottom of the bridge span, and then they will have to shut down the bridge and conduct extremely significant repairs to pretty much replace the entirety of the arch on this side of the bridge, which could end up taking a year or two, depending on how fast Russian reconstruction efforts would be able to go ahead, and how easily they would be able to find any contractors that even would have the ability at the moment, or would even have the wish at the moment, to go into that area, which is practically a war zone, and try and rebuild the arch. So this is actually a pretty decent hit. This may actually be the hit that takes out the bridge, either in the next couple of weeks or months, depending on what kind of actions the Russians take as a result of the significant damage that has now been caused to the bridge structure. But I hope that was able to highlight what this is, or at least a similar structural example as far as civil engineering goes, with another similar bridge like the Hernando de Soto Bridge over the Mississippi River. And to explain that to a little bit of better detail with a good example that actually shows that this can become a significant issue. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news, well, actually major news, that the Crimean Bridge finally has been hit. But before we move on from that, a lot of people have been talking about what this shows for the Kerch Bridge. Is that really as serious a hit as I'm making it out to be? Or is it less serious than that and more so minor structural damage? And Matthew, what are people thinking about it? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so based on our photo evidence, and right now we only have one photo to see of the Kerch Bridge damage, it looks like that one archway has been severely scorched, and it looks like maybe a chunk has been taken out of it as well. So the big question is the bridge structurally compromised, or is it superficial damage? It looks like about 42% said it is structurally compromised, while only about 16% said it's superficial damage, and 32% said, I really can't determine without more detail. And first of all, obviously I want to say this. I'm not a structural engineer, so I'm probably not qualified to give an answer, but just from my layman's opinion, just looking at the photo, it looks like it probably is a structural issue, at least just in my layman's opinion, which doesn't mean very much, but just looking at it when you see a chunk taken out of something, and also severe scorch marks on the metal like that on a very crucial span of the bridge, common sense tells you it's probably not safe. But also at the same time, with only one photo, it's kind of hard to tell without seeing other versions of the photo or more angles of the photos. And I'm actually going to be with the 32% that said we really can't determine without more detail. We need more photos or a video to see exactly what has been hit on that span. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd actually say that I'd be with the 42%. The damage is significant and will most likely result in a stress fracture of that arch and span that is critical to holding up that area of the bridge. Really quickly, let me see if I can go back and show y'all once again the Hernando de Soto Bridge, which is probably our best modern example of this sort of an issue. And let me see if I can get y'all a time lapse, if I can, of the stress fracture. Let's see. It doesn't appear that I can. It looks like the latest example that they were able to find this on was an annual inspection in 2019, which is where the stress fracture was first spotted on a drone inspection, which you could see right there. But outside of that, this stress fracture, at least from what was understood after the investigation was conducted by the NTSB to uncover the reason as to why the stress fracture had occurred and led to a complete severing of the girder, was that there was a small fracture that was started at the very bottom of the girder. It was an incredibly small one. It was about an inch or two wide, but over the multiple series of rush hours that happen every day, and for about the next year or two after that, this stress fracture then further compounded into a, well, not just it was more so a stress crack at the point, but the stress crack turned into a stress fracture and eventually completely severed the box girder. With that in mind, even with this only being on one visible side of the arch's structure, it is entirely possible that this could later evolve to be an entire split of the arch, working out from that specific spot within the girder, considering that that was a similar example that we saw on the Hernando de Soto Bridge, which has a similar construction, especially considering that it also is an arch-supported bridge structure, much like that of the Kerch Bridge. That sort of stress fracture or stress crack could also have appeared equally so on the actual arch structure of the Hernando de Soto Bridge and largely led to the same result. It's just that it actually happened on the on the road deck below, which was being supported by the arches. But the metallurgical processes and stresses that exist would still be the same for this arch, and for that reason, I believe this is actually a serious hit. And while it's not going to completely shut down the bridge right now, if the Russians do nothing and they do not shut down the bridge eventually to start affecting repairs, this is eventually going to start turning into a significant stress crack, and then a significant stress fracture of the girder, much like we saw on the Hernando de Soto bridge. So I hope
also, Enforcer, one other thing as well. I saw AF Kaplan in the live chat ask a really good question. He said, is it known what kind of drone damaged the Kerch bridge? And that's a good question, because if this little section here is truly structurally compromised and Ukraine was able to get a drone through to hit it, and I assume it was probably an aerial drone since it's obviously way up in the air like this, then Ukraine could simply go in a second time, hit this exact spot where it's already compromised, and have a very high chance of just taking the thing out pretty much, or at least causing a major structural issue with this entire span of the bridge. So what do you think it was, Enforcer? What type of aerial drone do you think it was that hit this bridge?
I'm not entirely sure, actually, because we've never seen any of them make it through. We've never seen a Liuti. We've never seen any of the modern jet-powered drones make it through either. We've pretty much been able to confirm that at some point or another, all of those drones have been attempted to be used, and all of them have been stopped by the air defense perimeter. So I wouldn't even be able to begin to hypothesize what actually hit the bridge. It appears that it was carrying a fairly standard 50-kilogram explosive type warhead, because the cratering seems to be conducive to that, especially considering that it hit straight onto a steel plate that makes up the girder, and that was the kind of damage that resulted. And also the heavy powder residue around it seems as though it was probably a standard 50-kilogram warhead, but that means it could be practically any drone in the Ukrainian drone forces, because pretty much all of them carry a 50-kilogram warhead.
Yeah, it's true. And also, by the way, I'm sure we'll get to this in the news a little bit later, but Germany, even though they've classified all their weapon shipments, the German top general has stated today that long-range weapons from Germany will arrive in just a couple of weeks. By the end of July, Ukraine will have long-range weapons that can strike deep behind Russian lines and also strike the Kerch Bridge as well. So that's coming right around the corner on top of this very soon. So they could be looking at maybe a Taurus missile even heading toward the bridge at some point here in the next couple of weeks when they do arrive.
And that could be entirely possible as well. We're waiting to see what the German support will look like. And once again, their actual support is classified in number and type. So while they're making an announcement that the first wave of support is going to be coming in late July, the exact details of the types and numbers of missiles being provided will never be known publicly, at least based off of the statements by the German Bundestag, which is their version of a parliament. But nevertheless, one other interesting thing that I want to share with you all really quickly before we move on, I thought this would just kind of be a little neat fact to share with all of y'all. The Hernando de Soto Bridge is actually designed, at least its arches are, to be designed like a seagull with its wings swooped out, with the center part of the two arches being the body and the outer two parts of the arches being the wings. It's actually a really unique and pretty cool design when you know that that was the general intended purpose behind the design, was to make it look like a swooping seagull. But that's just a little interesting fact about the structural and historical example that we used to speak about the stress crack that we're now going to possibly be seeing on the arch of the Kerch Bridge inside of Crimea. But moving on from that news and that information about what's going on with the Kerch Bridge, we have also been able to hear of significant developments inside of the Middle East itself, as we have been able to hear today that it appears that the Syrian interim government and the Syrian Democratic Forces are going right back at it again. And really quickly, I do want to show you all the current situation that exists inside of the former Syrian Arab Republic, now known largely by many as the Syrian interim government. The Syrian interim government is not exactly in control of the entirety of Syria, and not only that, it's run into a great deal of issues actually centralizing control. The areas that are in white and gray are generally understood to be under de facto Syrian interim government control, which the interim government is largely controlled by a unitary party, the Reformed, if you want to call them that, Harir Tahrir al-Sham, and also led by al-Jalani, who is now taking the de facto position as president of the Syrian interim government. Their reign has been very tumultuous ever since they've taken over control of the country after the abdication of Bashar al-Assad and his exile in the Russian Federation, and we have seen that a decent amount of areas under Syrian interim government control, or we'll just call it SIG control from this point, SIG, the areas under SIG control have been having a great deal of issues as of late. We have been able to hear of ongoing rebellions, which you can actually see on this map if I can zoom in these dashed red areas, those are actually areas of direct rebel control at the moment. We're not exactly sure who the rebel groups are, and a lot of them profess different sorts of beliefs and statements, but generally the underlying fact is that they are a united front, at least the rebel-held areas, against the SIG at the moment. Outside of that, we also have the Druze people, which currently control the As-Suwaida government, or largely the populated areas of the As-Suwaida government inside of southern Syria, which are in the pinkish-purplish color, or we could call them the, let's see, one second, folks, let me get this map back because I just accidentally clicked off of it. Here we are. Let me go get this again. These are the Druze people in the south. They've also declared open rebellion against the SIG, and at the moment, we do not believe that they're ever going to be joining the SIG once again to become a part of a new modern Syria. There's been a great deal of issues as to why this has happened and why the SIG has not been able to get any sort of clear, unified control over the country, but the largest faction that still generally exists outside of, you know, pretty much being on paper, kind of like the Syrian Free Army, which really only exists on paper, is the SDF, which is the Syrian Democratic Forces of the Northeast. The Syrian Democratic Forces are the only faction in the country that we could currently say is actually democratic, at least in their structure. They do allow for elections, the free practice of religion, and they do have generally a representation of each cultural group and religious group inside of their country currently. However, the issue with that is that they are mostly made up of Kurdish populations of the Kurdish northern lands of Syria, much like the northern Kurdish lands of Iraq and the southeastern Kurdish lands in Turkey. This causes a great deal of tension within the area, and the problem isn't exactly that they're Kurds. Kurds are simply just a cultural group within the area. The issue is that the SIG and the Turks hate the Kurds. That's just really what it comes down to. The Turks hate the Kurds because of a group called the PKK, which is, I believe, something like the Popular Kurdish Front, which is a terrorist organization that conducts terrorist attacks within southeastern Turkey and throughout the whole of Turkey in an attempt to force the Republic of Turkey's government to liberate this area and create it into an independent Kurdish state, with the PKK also having greater ambitions to unite the Kurds of northeastern Syria and northern Iraq into a single Kurdish state, which would be called Kurdistan. The Syrian Democratic Forces do not recognize the PKK as a legitimate Kurdish force and do denounce them as a terrorist organization, but this does not stop the Republic of Turkey from stating that the SDF may as well be aligned to the PKK simply for the fact that they are also Kurdish ethnically, and for that reason, the Turks have significant issues with the SDF. They also have significant issues with the Kurds of the northern Kurdish lands in Iraq as well. This has led to the SIG, which has largely been supported and was brought to power by the Turks, also being hostile against the SDF, and the SDF is under a general understanding that if they were to concede and allow their territories to be controlled by the SIG is going to most likely start conducting reprisals against the Kurds or start to subjugate them to incredibly harsh treatment and punishments. For that reason, the SDF has refused to unite with the SIG to create a modern Syrian Arab Republic, and for that reason, we've seen the tensions have started to rise between the two groups. I also want to make it a little bit clear that at least at the moment, if the SDF and the SIG were supported by anyone, the SIG is supported by the Turks, the SDF is supported largely by the United States, although the United States is also shifting its attention to try and have a friendlier outlook and disposition towards the SIG at the moment. Also, the Druze rebels in the south are actually supported by the Israelis. They're a minor player, though. But beyond that, we were able to hear that the tensions have risen high enough today that firefighting has now broken out near to the area of the Euphrates River at Dier Ez-zour, with the SDF firing from the northern side of the river and the SIG firing from the southern side of the river. And I'll be showing you that clip right here.
A lot of heavy fire right there. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's an insane amount. Once again, it's pitch black in the video. We can't see whose side is filming and what side they're firing at, but this is clearly showing the firefights that are happening in Dier Ez-zour at the moment between the SIG and the SDF.
They must have like a hell of a lot of money, but this is a hell of a lot of tracers they're just firing off at just random right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like 1 in every 5 rounds. It's literally 1 in every 1. It's every round is a
Just
tracer.
wasting them.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Also, by the way, I do have to clarify this. Some people brought this up in the chat, and I actually forgot to tell you all this yesterday. But the PKK, which has actually existed, it's like the People's Kurdish Party or Front or something like that. It's a terrorist group that's existed inside southeastern Syria, Turkey. It's been declared a terrorist group for 50 or so years, ever since they started to exist in the 70s. I do have to clarify really quickly that they actually ceased to exist effective yesterday, 17 hours ago, as they actually declared a complete dissolution of their organization and actually turned in their weapons under Turkish oversight, and they were actually burned yesterday. I forgot to mention that, and I also forgot to include that in our news yesterday, but the PKK officially disbanded as of 17 hours ago and has ceased to exist, which is something that I forgot to bring up here. Beyond that, however, that has not changed the position of the Turkish government, because we have seen that since the firefights have broken out, Turkish drones have entered SIG airspace. I do want to make this clear as well, because I've seen some people asking what SIG is. It is the Syrian interim government, or pretty much the abbreviation for the Syrian interim government, which is SIG, which also is SIG. And I'm saying that so that way I don't have to say Syrian interim government over and over and over. So from this point on, if you're listening to the stream right now, we are referring to the Syrian interim government as the SIG, and we're referring to the Syrian Democratic Forces as the SDF. So that way we can shorten down the amount of times I have to say the name and how long the names really are, so we can get more focused on the analysis than trying to make sure that the names are being spoken in full. But beyond that, we were able to hear that Turkish drones did enter the airspace and are currently on the southern side of the Euphrates, apparently conducting reconnaissance in support of the SIG. And at the same time, we've also been able to hear American helicopters flying around the northern side of the Euphrates River on the SDF-controlled side, possibly in support of the SDF forces against the SIG, or at least trying to conduct some level of peacekeeping operations.
I like the fact that we're still all in Syria, even though we, like, it publicly, it's not like we left Syria, but really we're still there.
At the moment, we actually hear that there's about 3,000 troops still inside of northeastern Syria, which technically means that there's about an entire U.S. Army brigade combat team, which is still inside of northeastern Syria, at least in terms of just raw manpower that's there at the moment. But it is quite clear that the situation is starting to unravel inside of Syria, and that the two major parties that are left, the Syrian interim government and the Syrian Democratic Forces, are going at it once again. A lot of people have been wondering how this will end up turning out, and at the moment, we're not entirely sure. We do understand that both sides have significant foreign backing, the SIG supported by the Turks, the SDF mildly supported by the United States at the moment, and we're not entirely sure what sort of a resolution there would be. To be entirely honest with you all, the easiest resolution of this situation would just to be carve Syria up into two, with everything south of the Euphrates becoming a part of the Syrian interim government, and everything to the north of the Euphrates River becoming a part of some sort of a Kurdish state led by the Syrian Democratic Forces. And that probably is going to be our best bet, because I do not believe that al-Jilani will be favorable to the people of the Northeast, and considering the unstable governmental situation that will result in, and will result into an endless amount of insurgency within the northeastern part of the country, it will become a hotbed for terrorists to once again pop up and start raining terror throughout the entirety of the Middle East. So it'd be probably better to just carve Syria up into two separate halves, and let the Kurds have the northern part, and the rest of the SIG have the southern part south of the Euphrates. That's probably going to be the easiest way that we could see a resolution of this situation at the moment. But we're not entirely sure if the Department of State is going to pursue that, or if the Department of State is pursuing a policy of unifying the entirety of Syria under a single government, whether it be Jilani's or the SDF. That's not entirely clear, but it does appear that the United States might lean towards unifying the entire country under al-Jilani's HTS-led Syrian interim government. But with that, we are going to be moving on from those significant firefights and battles that are now happening across Syria once again at the Euphrates, and we are going to be moving us on into the Iranian news, which we've also been able to hear today, as we have been able to hear of significant explosions happening around the area of Kermanshah just earlier today, as we were able to hear of a massive explosion within the area. We have not been able to get video or picture evidence of this explosion, but it does appear that it is unknown in source still, and all the information that we have to work off of at the moment is that there was some sort of a major explosion that happened in Kermanshah, and that was it. We have also been able to hear inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran Iran's capital at Tehran, that there was an explosion near to the area where the IL-76 landed inside of the Mehrabad International Airport. Yesterday, there was an IL-76 that took off from Moscow and landed inside of Tehran at the Mehrabad International Airport, which you can actually see right there. And you can actually see the explosion off in the distance at the airport, which appears to have been wildly close to the area that Russian IL-76 was sitting on the tarmac at. We also were able to see a little bit more information, or at least another clip of the picture, that came from the Mehrabad International Airport, where smoke and explosions were clearly occurring and rising from an area near to the tarmac. We are not entirely sure at the moment what the explosions were a result of in Kermanshah or Tehran, but once again, it does appear that Iran is spontaneously combusting, with at least no official reason or statement being made as to why these spontaneous combustions are happening all over the country. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran is still stating, according to their foreign minister Abbas Araghchi, or Gachia, maybe that's a better way to say it, but Araghchi, I don't know how to pronounce that. He stated, we'll just call him Abbas, foreign minister Abbas. He stated, "We will not accept any agreement that does not include our right to enrich uranium, and we will not negotiate regarding our military capabilities." So pretty much saying kiss our ass. Even after we bomb them, that's pretty much the Iranian response, is kiss our ass. We're not going to negotiate even on limiting our enrichment abilities, and we're also not going to negotiate on limiting our ballistic missile programs. So making it incredibly clear that the current Iranian government, even after taking an absolute thrashing for 2 straight weeks, is still determined on continuing on to the weaponization in terms of nuclear weaponry, and also continuing to develop missiles that will be able to threaten the United States directly with those nuclear weapons. We have also been able to hear as well that while that statement was made, it appears that the Iranians are running into a little bit of a roadblock, as new satellite image, according to Phytux Network, an amazing source on Twitter, from July 9th shows minimal activity at Iran's Isfahan nuclear complex. No excavation or repair equipment is seen at the tunnel entrances any longer, and about 20 meters of rubble still blocks access to the facility inside of the mountain. Roadblocks were spotted near one of the tunnels as well, showing that it's apparently been completely closed off to any kind of activity. No visible activity has also been spotted at the destroyed uranium facilities, and at Natanz, the only change is the cap that was placed over the GBU-57 impact hole, but there's been no additional efforts that we can visibly see from satellite pictures showing that any kind of contractors or government workers have come in and tried to clean up the sites and return them back to an operational level. We can actually see here at Natanz that little cap that they put over the hole that pretty much blew away the remainder of the facility that hadn't already been destroyed by the Israelis, and that was it. Beyond that, the rest of the main structures that were destroyed by the Israelis at their opening of the conflict are still destroyed at the moment, and there is no proof by satellite pictures to show that the Iranians are taking any major efforts to try and rebuild the Natanz facility or the Isfahan, or more so the Fordow uranium enrichment plants, and it appears that they've been left to their fates, at least at this point for now. However, a lot of people have also been saying that that may not necessarily be the case. They may have been left to their fate, according to some, because the Islamic Republic of Iran still has existent and operational uranium enrichment plants and other facilities that would allow for them to continue their nuclearization that they may have just moved their operations to in the meantime. And so rebuilding these facilities and getting them back up and running, at least for now, is not a top priority concern for the government. On the other hand, some people have also been saying that they are currently not conducting these sorts of operations because in realistic practice, while the Iranians are not willing to compromise on nuclearization, there is no viable way forward, according to some, for the nuclearization of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And this is leading a lot of people to have many different ideas, or at least opinions, about what's really happening at this point with the Iranian nuclear weapons program. But before we even get into talking about that in any greater depth, a lot of people are also wondering whether that Russian aircraft, the IL-76, that landed at the Mehrabad International Airport in Tehran, was responsible or involved at all for the explosions that just occurred at the airport inside the capital city. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like about 43% of the audience said yes, the Russian plane was likely involved with that explosion that happened at Iran's Tehran airport, while 23% said the plane just happened to be close, and 18% said it's a 50-50 chance of Russian involvement. Now, this one's a little bit interesting because, of course, this explosion happens to line up exactly with the landing of a Russian aircraft that was allegedly maybe carrying weapons to Iran. We're not really entirely sure what was on the aircraft, but some speculate that maybe it was weapons. And what's interesting is, apparently, after this aircraft unloaded, apparently that's when the explosion occurred. So it's very possible that whatever this plane was carrying might have been sabotaged or attacked, maybe by some on-the-ground forces, causing it to explode and then to ruin that as well. So I personally don't believe in coincidences, and the fact that that Russian plane was just there when this explosion occurred, I have a very strong feeling it was likely connected in some way or another. So I'm with the 44%. I think the Russian plane was likely involved in that explosion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm also with the 44% as well. The arrival of the Russian IL-76 and the explosions within the very area that aircraft was at the airfield is showing that there may have been some involvement by the IL-76 or a reason for the explosions at the airport. Beyond that, I wouldn't really be able to explain exactly why that would be the case. That would be unknown at the moment. But the fact that the IL-76 arrived and then the airport just started to spontaneously combust seems to suggest that there must be some kind of a logical deduction or correlation that could be made to the arrival of the aircraft and the explosions at the airfield. And so with that, I hope I addressed that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And moving on from that and into some other Iranian government statements, we've also been able to hear that the Iranians are now conducting an internal investigation as to whether an insider informant enabled Israel's strikes on a Supreme National Security Council meeting during the 12-day war, according to the Fars news agency, pointing to unusually precise intelligence behind the attack. It is highly likely that there could have been an insider inside of the Iranian government, but it's also likely that the Mossad may have just been up everyone's asses and just knew where they were and then hit them with a bomb. That's also highly likely as well. It's probably more so the fact that the Iranians are not really that good at operational security because they pretty much put giant billboards onto their enrichment facilities and said, hey, these are our giant mega nuclear weapon destruction manufacturing facilities right off of the interstate. Don't blow them up. And so I would generally assume that they probably were not that great at operational security, and the Mossad was just up their ass and knew exactly where they were, so that way they could end up bombing the national security meeting. But beyond that, we also were able to hear that the Iranians have put out some new propaganda in the meantime, and it appears that their nuclear ambitions, at least for now, have not dissipated much. But one thing that's a little bit interesting about this propaganda image, which is generally showing the Iranians nuking Israel, is that it looks to me that this was generally, one, AI made, so it appears that the Iranians are getting in on the AI craze. Second, aren't both of those nuclear bombs blowing up in the West Bank? That doesn't even look like they're blowing up in Israel. I mean, like, if you look at that, look at this. Here's Jerusalem. Here's the northern part of the West Bank. Here's the southern part of the West Bank. Here's an even clearer distinction of the borders in Israel. There's the Gaza Strip. Here's the West Bank. Those nuclear bombs are clearly blowing up in the West Bank in this propaganda picture. So, are they wanting to nuke the Palestinians? Like, I'm not really sure what they're going for here in this propaganda picture, but it's one that's thought-provoking, that's for sure. But, you know, Iran does whatever the hell they do. We'll be moving on from that, though, in that little propaganda poster. And we're going to be moving on into some other news that we've also been able to hear, that the United States is still conducting an intelligence gathering operation. We have been able to hear that an MQ-4 Triton has been gathering intelligence on the Iranians within the Persian Gulf and is currently conducting orbits in the area, apparently using its long-range optical systems to be able to try and gather as much intelligence and data as they can about high-level intelligence sites or high-level targets that are inside the Islamic Republic of Iran and attempting to observe them through its optical systems. This aircraft is flying at about 46,000 feet, and really quickly, how far? 46,000 feet. Let me go get the answer really quickly for this. So at 46,000 feet, which is just about where this Triton's at, you can actually see about 180 miles out into the... Well, let me make sure on that one. Let's see, I want to make sure that I got that correct. You can actually see about 245 miles, correction. So with that MQ-4 Triton being where it's at, which is about right here, you can actually see... Let's see here, about 260 miles in. So about that far into the Islamic Republic of Iran. So this aircraft is able to gather a decent amount of intelligence on really anything that the Iranians have going on in the lower third of their country near to the Persian Gulf at the moment. And it does appear that it was attempting to gather more intelligence, most likely on the facilities at Shiraz and Bushehr, and possibly even the operations of the Iranian Navy at Bandar Abbas, which also wouldn't be too far away for them to see as well. Pretty much at the very maximum range of the optical systems on board the Triton. But beyond that, it does appear that the United States States of America is continuing to gather reconnaissance on one of our major enemies, at least within this region, in the light of possible military actions which may be conducted in the future by the United States of America against the Islamic Republic of Iran in continuation of our removal of their nuclear weapons program and also their ballistic missile programs, which were laid out as proper casus bellis in the past. But beyond that, or casus belli, which is the correct pronunciation. But beyond that, a lot of people have been talking about that little propaganda image. Let's go take a look at it really quickly. This one right here, that was put out by the Iranians earlier today. And a lot of people are wondering, what do they make of it? What do they make of it, Matthew? And what are you making of it as well?
So to me, this looks like maybe they found the AI subscription premium plan and they decided to put it to use. That's what it looks like to me. But in all seriousness, though, what is the audience's thoughts? What do you make of this image that the Iranian officials put out today showing Israel and also their friends in the West Bank getting hit by a nuke? So 67% said it's the usual Iran BS propaganda, while 23% said Iran plans on nuking Israel soon, and 4% said it was probably just a rogue Iran official who happened to get his hands on a premium subscription. So on this one, I would say it's probably the usual BS propaganda. If Iran had a nuclear weapon that was functioning and they had a delivery system for it, they would have already nuked Israel. I'm pretty sure about that. And definitely during that last conflict, the 12-day war, we would have seen a nuke fired at Israel. But guess what? We didn't see that. So they probably don't have one, and they probably will never have one as long as the U.S. stays on its game. So I'm going to say I'm on the 67%. It's just BS, and that's pretty much as far as it'll go. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say that it's BS propaganda. Just because this is low effort does not mean that this is official Iranian propaganda. This is official Iranian propaganda. They are very low effort in what they do, and if you've ever been around to watch us cover Iranian propaganda before, it's not ever high quality. It's some of the lowest quality slop that I've ever seen put out by a government. So that seems to be well within their ballpark, and it's the usual BS propaganda. They don't have a nuclear weapon. They're probably never going to get a nuclear weapon at this rate, and I think that this little status quo that we have going on at the moment, it will probably be assured to remain in place here in the near future. Because I have I've heard that there's a list in the White House, and they're checking it twice, and they're going to find out who's naughty and nice. But there is no list technically. But beyond that, they are going to be going over there and they're going to be dealing with the Iranian government probably here in the near future, because they're still saying that they're going to be working towards nuclearization, which is good enough for us to go over there and start hitting them again. So with that in mind,
Personally, me, I don't like lists. I don't like lists at all. The only list that I like to be on is Santa's good list, or the whatever they call it, the good list or whatever. You don't want to be on the naughty list. Now, the naughty list, if you find yourself on that, you could be in some peril if you find yourself on the naughty list. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people this year might be on the naughty list, unfortunately. But in all seriousness, though, Iran still cannot control themselves. I still find it funny. I said this during the 12-day war as well. Iran still cannot control themselves from making these wildly escalatory statements, like even putting out the picture of the nukes on Israel. That, even though that seems stupid, it's still another jab at Israel, saying that they're going to destroy and basically kill everybody in the entire country. And considering the fact that there's literally U.S. recon aircraft off the coast of Iran right now, preparing potentially for a second round of strikes, and Iran is still doing this and still egging the U.S. on to attack them again, it shows you how stupid they are, how reckless they are toward their own security and their own safety even. And it's more prudent to do a second round of strikes, at least in my opinion, because they're still doing that and they need to be taught a lesson.
I would agree. I would have to certainly agree that they need to be taught a valuable lesson. A lesson about humility, perhaps. Maybe that would be a good one to try and do. Maybe. But, I would have to say, though, that the Iranians, they get off with this idea that they can pop off at the mouth a little bit too much. And that's usually something that you cannot do. That's just something you can't do at all. And, another thing that they got away with was destroying a pretty expensive radar at the Al Udeid Air Base. I remember that there was a time, and, folks, I remember when I said this, some people were trying to go, oh, look at you. And I ended up that I was right. I said that missile clearly didn't go into a place that wasn't non-vital on the base. It hit something. The Iranians weren't shooting those missiles off to have a free fireworks show in Qatar. They were shooting them at U.S. service members to kill them. The fact they hit that radar system is showing clearly they were aiming for the very dead center of that base, and if they killed U.S. service members, it was going to be fine. If I remember correctly, I heard the President of the United States come out and say that the missile landed in the middle of a grassy field in the middle of a desert, and it didn't hit anything or damage anyone. And I remember that it was all square, that all's well that ends well. And we let the Iranians get the upper hand at the last minute in this exchange and pretty much come out looking like they came out on top because they were able to strike at the U.S. They actually hit a multi-million-dollar radar system in the Al Udeid Air Base, and then they got away with it, and we didn't do anything back to them. It pretty much emboldens them to keep acting like an idiot, to be entirely honest, because...
Do you think that maybe they thought it landed in the field or a grassy field? Also, there's not too many grassy fields, so I'm not sure really where that would be anyway in the area. But also at the same time, though, do you think that maybe they thought it landed there because the radar got taken out and, it wasn't able to track it?
No, if the radar was taken out, they knew that immediately because, it's an explosion happening in the dead center of the base, literally where everyone's sheltering. So it's not like they go, oh, like they'd hit a grassy field. Like the Department of Defense knew when that radar was taken out because the commander of that base, and whatever they were saying, whatever the report was, that was going straight up to the Secretary of Defense. So it was known off of the bat that radar had been destroyed. It was a completely false statement being made that it just hit in the middle of a grassy field. And I want to make it a little bit clear that you're pretty hard pressed to find a grassy field in Qatar. Like that's like saying that's like saying like I shot a gun into the snow in Alabama. There's not any snow in Alabama. You're really hard pressed to do that most times of the year around here. That's kind of the same thing with it landing in a grassy field at the Al Udeid Air Base inside.
It's almost
Qatar.
as elusive as the grassy knoll that we had heard about way back in the day. Same thing. Like the U.S. has a thing with grassy knolls. Like there's not really one here where the radar's at. There's really not one, back in Dallas. There's just, grassy knolls are like a really bad thing when it comes to America.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's almost like it's just that it's an ongoing sort of an issue. And really quickly, I'm trying to find the Al Udeid Air Base. I always forget where the freaking here it is. Let me go see if I can find y'all the radome that got blown to pieces. Here it is. It's actually this one right here. There's the radome. The missile came in from the northern side of the complex, so it flew over all these, aircraft that were clearly stationed at Al Udeid at the time, flew right over the whole base, and landed right here, just hundreds of feet away from the mailroom, and slammed into this radar, and blew it to pieces. These facilities, these buildings right here, are supporting structures to the radar. That's where the actual radar workers or service members are actually operating in the Air Force out of. So this missile didn't land in the middle of a grassy field. Also, it's still really hard to find a grassy field in Al Udeid Air Base. If you look around, there's not really a lot of grass. There is some grass right here, however, around the Al-Zim Mohammed bin something, or these little buildings down here, which also appear to be barracks as well. There's a minimal amount of grass, but it didn't hit there. It hit directly onto a radome, so there wasn't even any grass around. Just to make that a little clear. Not that that's the hill I'm dying on here. The hill I'm dying on is the fact that the Iranians did fire at the space with the intent to kill and maim service members, because that missile clearly showed that was the case. And why we didn't respond, I don't know. Me personally, I find that to be a bit of weakness in my opinion, because it let the Iranians look like they came out on top. And not only that, then when the facts came out, they really did come out on top, because they actually got the last hit of the conflict, and instead of actually responding to that and going, okay, they were supposed to have been in a ceasefire, they lied, and they just destroyed a multi-million-dollar radar, let's get back at them, because they're clearly liars. We just said all's well that ends well, and just left it there, like that was the end of it. And now they're still going, even after the U.S. bombed them and the Israelis bombed them for a couple of weeks, we're still going to do whatever we want, and they can still get bent. And it's like, why in the world do we even want to act like there's any point in negotiating with a country like this? It's a ridiculous sort of a notion.
Yeah, I don't get it either. And also to like make up a lie and say it landed on a grassy field or a grassy knoll or something, that seems like the worst lie you can make up, because that's going to piss off every suburban dad in America, that somebody landed on our lawn or something over there on the base. It's like, that's probably the worst thing you could say, Say it landed out in the sand or the desert or something. Don't say it landed on the lawn.
Yeah, I mean, really, honestly, there's a lot of suburban dads out there who, are putting, the patterns in their grass and everything. They're getting pissed by this. To insult everyone in America by saying that it hit a grassy, a yard or something that's just crazy. But beyond that, I saw someone say we didn't respond to prevent escalation. But it's not our job to prevent escalation when someone's clearly escalating. And that's something that I always believe in heavily, is that We prevented escalation by getting them to agree to a ceasefire. They immediately escalated right after that. After our attempt to de-escalate, they escalated it by firing missiles at Al-Adid and then hitting the radome at the facility. That was their actions, not ours. At that point, it's out of our hands. They've escalated it. So either we can sit there and respond to their escalation, and then they can decide to back off because they just broke the ceasefire that they just agreed to hours before that to conduct that attack at Al-Adid, or they could have not done it in the first place. You know, that's really their options. Because it's not up to the United States to have someone like, you know, like for example, this is a good example. If someone goes into a bank and robs it here in this country, it's not the responsibility of the police officers to go, okay, well, they went in the bank and they killed 3 bank tellers while they were robbing it. Let's try and de-escalate. Let's just let them get away with the money so that way we don't create a huge scene here. No, you go, we're going to hunt this guy down because what he's done is heinous and it's a violation of the law. And if he ends up getting in a shootout with the cops, it's going to be one hell of a shootout and we'll end up killing him before he even gets to court if he wants to go out that way. That's the usual answer to a situation like that. You never sit there and go, okay, we're dealing with a terrorist state, and we just de-escalated this by going out of our way to try and get them to agree to a ceasefire, and they just agreed to it. And then an hour or two after that ceasefire, they then fire 10 missiles at the airbase, and one of them actually hits a vital system. And it could have killed service members in the process as well. Even just because we shot down the other 9 missiles doesn't mean that those missiles on the very tip of their warheads in those fuses were not having the names of U.S. service members on them if we didn't manage to shoot them down. Those missiles were aimed right at this base, right at the barracks, right at key facilities. They would have wounded and killed service members if we hadn't shot those missiles down. It is quite clear that at least by the actions they made, we tried to de-escalate, they didn't want to, and they should have faced the music after that. That's the real truth of the situation, at least in my opinion, because we can't alter other people's choices, but if they make stupid choices, they've got to reap the bad the bad, I guess, consequences of their decisions would be the best way to put it in my opinion. But with that, it is time for us to move on from this Qatar talk, because it's just a lot of Qatar, you know. But moving on from that and on out of that news in the Middle East, we have also been able to hear that the Israelis, before we move on completely out of the region, were bombing the Gaza Strip a little bit more today. This is a little bit of a normal occurrence, but they were continuing to bomb it as they're continuing their operation to try and wipe out Hamas again. Outside of that, and moving on into East Asia, we've also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China is now opening a factory for the mass production of the new Shenyang J35. And we can actually see the factory in the pictures here of the new factory. And we can also see the Shenyang J35, or at least the prototypes, here, which was produced by the Shenyang company, which is a fairly ubiquitous sort of a state-owned company in China that's been producing aircraft for the People's Republic of China's People's Liberation Army Air Force for the entirety of the country's history. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear in North Korea that the North Koreans have taken on their first foreign tourists to the Wonsan Kalma Resort. Picture seen here. They have welcomed their first Russian tourists. We don't know how many there are, and to make it a little bit clear, not really a lot of Russians choose to travel to North Korea, because even the Russians, with the kind of shitty country they live in, know that North Korea is so shitty they don't even want to go. So since since the opening of Russian travel into North Korea, which has been allowed since the early part of 2024, I think only 900 Russians have ended up traveling into North Korea since that time, based off of the past publicized numbers from the Russian Federation. So an incredibly small amount. It's not anything large at all. But apparently the first group of maybe like 3 people from Russia have ended up arriving at the Wonsan tourist village. And it is apparently a week-long trip. And y'all are not going to believe this. A week-long trip to North Korea ain't even cheap. It costs $1,800 US for this 1-week luxury trip to North Korea. And apparently
that's expensive. What do you get for that? You get a hotel room, you get to go in that water out here, which is probably polluted, and you also get to get the lockup treatment or something like that. I guess some people like that.
Yeah, you get the guide, you get the chance of being executed on the spot. You know, there's going to be the wiretapping going on in the room. Like every room in this, dude. Like one thing that Kim Jong-un deeply respected was Richard Nixon, because at one point, man, Kim Jong-un was talking to his advisors and generals, and he was saying, go on and wiretap them. And they start putting wiretaps and everything. But beyond that, we do understand that probably every single room is wiretapped, and it's not even cheap. It's $1,800 to stay here for a week. I mean, that's really expensive. But One thing that is interesting, though, is y'all might be interested to know this. This is the largest privately owned beachfront resort in the world currently. It's 3 miles wide. Of private, well, it's kind of a bit of like a cop out because it's owned by a communist state, so the state
Yeah.
owns everything. But
It's definitely not privately owned for sure.
yeah, but technically, it is the longest like singularly owned beachfront anywhere in the world as far as a resort goes. But will it work? Probably not. Chances of that are low. It's right next door to the Wonsan Kalma Airport, which has also been refitted with like a nice little international airport complex to be able to get tourists immediately to the tourist village without them seeing the rest of North Korea or traveling through it to infect the population with their wicked outside ideologies, like, actually eating. So they bring them straight to the tourist village and then they just stay there and they don't deal with anyone else anywhere. But that seems to be something that it's not going to end up well. This complex is actually designed to attract about 1 million tourists annually to this area, which is never going to happen because the largest number of tourists that ever went to North Korea in a single year was in 2019, and it was about 190,000 people. So this single beachfront property has been over-designed to allow for a 500% increase in capacity off of the record numbers that they saw in 2019 when they allowed anyone in the world to travel to North Korea. And right now, the only country that's allowed for their citizens to travel to North Korea is Russia. Not even Chinese citizens are allowed anymore into North Korea. It's just the Russians. And there's not that many Russians that want to go to North Korea and enjoy a beach vacation there. I mean, you look out here into the ocean and it's beautiful oceans. You look behind you and it's the famine-swept slums of Wonsan Harbor. Like, it's like, who in the world will want to go here? Like, look at this little city.
Do you think North Korea did this and built this like really nice beach village here at Putin's behest because the Russians feel scared to go vacation in Crimea now? Because Crimea they were using as like their beach vacation place and obviously stolen land, but they were using it for beach vacations anyway. So maybe they're sending the Russians over here now instead of to Crimea so they feel safe.
It's possible. It might be a possibility. It's just, I think that North
That's
Korea.
a long way to go for the beach.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of Russians are not going to be flying from Western Russia all the way out to Vladivostok to hop on a train or a plane to then fly into that area of North Korea. That's probably not going to happen. And also, the cost is prohibitively expensive. It's $1,800 for a week. And y'all have to remember that the median income in Russia for an average citizen is about $10,000 a year. So this is literally about 20% of a Russian's annual income to go to North Korea for a week. Most Russians are not going to be stupid enough to take this option. And even the Russians that have the ability to travel to North Korea right now are not, because since the beginning part of 2024, a year and a half later, only 900 Russians have ever traveled into North Korea since travel was opened back up to the Russians and no one else.
Yeah.
So no one's going to be going here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they probably would. It costs way too much, number one. But the Russians' vacation options are really honestly sad as hell at this point because they can go to North Korea right here to this one little stretch of beach right here and be watched like a hawk and also stalked basically by the North Korean government. Or they can go vacation in Afghanistan with the Taliban, who just put out a new vacation commercial where they were all holding AK-47s and welcoming visitors from Russia to come down there and take a look, which didn't look very good. Or they can go to the stolen land in Crimea and be under constant drone alert from the Ukrainians. So at this point, I think the Russians, and they weren't allowed to worry about it anyway because they don't have the money to go on vacation in the first place, but they really have narrowed down their vacation options pretty badly, actually.
Honestly, man, that Taliban tourism ad actually looked kind of goated, swimming in a freaking lake with an AK. Like, I'm just kidding, by the way. Like, if you go to Afghanistan, I heard that they have this really nice therapeutic process. It's like a spa, but they call it the torture chamber, and they do these really cool things. They stretch out your back. They like clean under your toenails with like a nail. They do all kinds of cool stuff. They even give you this thing called electroshock therapy. It's really relaxing, actually. Some people do go into seizures from it, but don't worry about those people. They're just a little weak, and sometimes the results are bad. I heard that they even they are so kind they don't even make you sign a waiver because your safety is assured inside of Afghanistan, or more so, it's uninsured because there is no insurance in Afghanistan. But beyond that, I would
Oh
say,
wait, I forgot. I forgot. The Russians have one other vacation spot. I almost forgot. I don't want to leave this one out because it'd be a travesty to leave this out. They can go to Cuba if they want to. That's
oh
another place they can
yeah.
go. Beautiful Cuba. They can go there as well. Known for the Ferraris and things like that. It's just a wonderful place. It's like the Monaco of the area for the Russians.
It's a wonderful place. I actually heard that there's a lot of very nice women in Havana, Cuba. Very, very nice women. They hang out all the time, 24/7, and they just sit out there. And, you know, they're all right. That's what I've heard at least. But I don't know. A lot of Russians can vouch for that. But I think their noses are starting to rot off at this point. But you can ask them. They'll sound a little nasally though. But beyond that, I would generally say if I was a Russian dude, the tourism situation is cooked. Like there's just nowhere to go. So I guess they just live in their hellhole. Like I don't know. But I saw David say, I can't tell if the enforcer's being serious or not. I'm being completely sarcastic about all of them. By the way, Jamie, can we pull up that video of the Taliban the tourism ad so that we can show
We
it to all
can't
of you?
show it, sadly.
We
We can't
can't?
show it on the air. No, sadly we can't. But if you want to see it though, it is on Twitter. The Taliban with their vacation ad. It's horrific, by the way. Like just to give an overview, it was the most menacing, scary vacation travel agency ad you've ever seen in your life. And literally, the Talibans were the directors of it. They were the cinematographers, and they were also the stars of the video as well. And it looked horrifying. Like really, I'm not sure really what the Taliban were going for. Either they're that deluded to think that looked good, or they were doing it to, I guess, be funny. I'm not really sure.
I don't know, but I would never travel to Afghanistan. I would never travel to North Korea, and I sure as hell would never travel to Cuba. So the Russians are cooked, man. Honestly, they're cooked. The economics are bad. The travel options are bad. It's hell on earth to be a Russian right now in the 21st century. But anyways, with that, I hope you all enjoyed our little Wonsan tourist village news. Just in case you all were ever wondering about going there or not. But I do have to also tell y'all that U.S. passports cannot legally be used to enter North Korea by order of the Department of State. So not only is North Korea on a level 4 travel advisory, U.S. passports simply are not legally permissible to actually enter North Korea with, according to the Department of State. And so the North Koreans, or anyone, is not allowed to go into North Korea from the United States. Thank God, because there would be some stupid idiot out there that would go into North Korea, and then they do something like punch Kim Jong Un's poster in a hotel, and then end up in a camp. You generally one, you don't go to a country like that. Two, you don't do that kind of stuff in a country like that and expect that it's going to turn out well. You know what I mean? That's like saying, yes, I think a great vacation idea would be to go to Stalin's Soviet Union. You just generally don't do those kinds of ideas or options. You're begging for bad things to happen. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on from this East Asian news and on back into Ukraine and the greater part of Western Europe. But before we get into all of this news, which is quite extensive and voluminous, mind you all, I do want to make sure that we get a couple of questions from the chat before we move on into this segment. So what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right, so jumping right into our first super chats of the night. The first one, is going to go to K-Dub Janky, a longtime channel legend who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, K-Dub, as always, for that support, and we appreciate that very much. And K-Dub said, great coverage, and can't always be live with the LSA, but catching all the streams when I can, and great common denominator for my day. And take a question from my buddy AF Kaplan, a channel legend as well, if he has one, and may your channel keep rocking through the years.
Hey, and a big thanks to you for the support, K-Dub Janky, and I gotta thank you for enjoying the great coverage. And of course, we know that a lot of folks are always busy out there, but we're always happy to have all of y'all here whenever y'all can manage to get the free time to be here live on air, like you are tonight, K-Dub Janky. And also, I gotta say, we will make sure to try and get a live chat from AF Complan if we have one. And thank you so much for enjoying our channel for years, K-Dub Janky, and continuing to support it, because folks like you help to make this channel possible and help it to keep on running for years and years on into the future, and through the years that we've already run so far. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And Matthew, do we have a question from AF Kaplan?
So I don't see in the spreadsheet a question from AF Kaplan, but I know he's in the chat though, and I think he might want to put a question in. So AF, if you have a question for us, put it in and I will grab it before this question segment is out.
And also, really quickly, before we move on, I saw a lot of people saying, I felt sorry for Otto Warmbier. I do as well, but the thing is that, just speaking with some sense on it, if you're an American that goes into a country whose entire philosophy is kill the wicked American imperialists, you're generally begging for something bad to happen to you. That's like that guy who went down to Haiti to go interview barbecue and then he got barbecued. It's like, like you can only have so much sympathy until you're like, okay, well, the Department of State already had a level 4 travel advisory out when that guy went and said, do not go to North Korea. It's incredibly dangerous. And then the guy decided he would go anyways. And then he ended up doing something goofy. He snuck out of his hotel room and he went down to a floor he was not allowed to be on. And then he actually messed with a poster of their great beloved, fatso. And then he got, in trouble for it. It's like all of that is something that you just wouldn't do. Like, like I wouldn't do it. I would have enough sense to say I'm not going to North Korea. And then he went and then he also did that. And it's like, I feel sorry for what happened to him, of course, but at the same time, like, I don't feel so sorry to the point it's like, oh, that's terrible. It's like, that was expected. That's what was going to happen. But it's like,
the goofy part is he went literally to the floor where it was surveillance on that floor. Like, that was the floor where they monitored all the hotel rooms that he went to. So he went to the forbidden floor, and on that floor is where they have the North Korean surveillance workers. So he walked down the hallway, and down the hallway, it's like the entrance to a movie theater, like viewing room or something. They have like a bunch of these like movie style posters on the wall, and they're all in like these little cases. So he goes up and grabs the poster out of the case, rolls it up and puts it under his arm and starts walking away. But the problem is the entire floor is literally filled with surveillance cameras, and they're literally watching him in the room right down the way. So by the time he left that floor and went back to his room, they'd already nabbed him. That was how, stupid it really was.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, but I feel sorry for what he went through, like the torture he went through, but at the same time, I don't feel sorry that it happened to him because it was expected that was going to happen to him, especially with all the bad decisions he made. One, he went into North Korea in the first place, which was already a bad decision, and then he made a series of the worst decisions possible that you could have made in North Korea. He conducted, like anyone who knows anything about North Korea, and if you've ever done research about it, he conducted a political crime, which in North Korea is the most severe type of crime you can conduct, is defacing or conducting any sort of unsavory actions with an image or an effigy of the great leaders. Like, that was the worst thing he could have done, and he went and did it. I was like, first, it was a terrible decision that he started to get there in the first place, and then he did that, which was the worst decision possible. So while his death was unfortunate, I don't really look at it as a tragedy. It's more so a cautionary tale to other people who might have goofy or stupid ideas of do not travel into North Korea. Generally not a smart idea. Something like that will probably happen to you. So, that's the way I would look at it, because I saw a lot of people putting in their opinions on it. That's my 2 cents on it. Because it's one thing if an American went to like South Korea and then a mob beat him to death. That would be something to have a major diplomatic incident over, because we generally consider South Korea to be a safe place to go. But if the Department of State is telling you before you even go, do not go into this country, it's really dangerous, and then you go in there and something happens, the Department of State has already made it clear from the American governmental position that we cannot guarantee your safety inside that country, so it's smart that you probably don't go. And then you go, and then if something happens to you, it's kind of what it is at that point. I think the U.S. government has a responsibility to protect our citizens when they're abroad, and I also feel like American citizens have a responsibility to pretty much act as ambassadors of their country when they're abroad. But at the same time, when the Department of State tells you don't go somewhere, and then you end up going there anyways, and then something bad happens to you, you're pretty much asking for it at that point. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here, and this one goes to Just Chillin', who puts in a $25 donation, and thank you very much, Just Chillin' as well, for that support. And they said, just keep on keeping on.
And we will keep on keeping on, Just Chillin', but I gotta thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because folks like you have helped us to keep on keeping on. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of our news.
All right, and this one goes to Boulder Boy, who puts in a 21 as well. And just like Just Chillin', Boulder Boy is a channel legend, and he said, keep up the good work.
And we will keep up the good work. And I got to thank all of y'all massively for y'all support and enjoying the channel and wanting to keep it running. But before we move on, I just saw someone say, why is North Korea dangerous to go to? Let me just pull this up really quickly. Department of State Travel Advisory. I will show y'all the exact reasoning that the Department of State gives. Let's see here. Hold up, folks. It's loading. It's a federal government website. They're generally slow. Here we go. So this is what they have. Like, if you're ever wondering, why is it not safe to travel to North Korea? Do not travel to North Korea due to the continuous serious risk of arrest, long-term detention, and threat of wrongful detention of U.S. nationals. Do not travel to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea for any reason. It's made incredibly clear. I mean, like this could not be any more clear. And then it also says U.S. passports are not valid for travel to, in, or through North Korea unless they are specially validated by the Department of State, which means you have to get special permission and a special temporary passport issued to be able to ever go to North Korea, which those are pretty much never issued. But that is the reason why it's considered to not be safe. And you can see the entire Department of State's reasoning here. Like, the Department of State isn't a douche. Like, they give you all of the info as to why it's not safe right here. Like that's a very important thing. If you ever plan on traveling abroad, make sure to check the travel advisories, because a country you might want to go to might actually be a dangerous place to go to at the moment, according to the Department of State. I mean, they literally have an entire global map you can look at, and it lists countries safe or unsafe and everything else in between. And it'll explain the reasons why they're not safe and what to look out for and what not to do. Like the Department of State, this is one of their main jobs as far as your safety is concerned. So, that's why North Korea is unsafe. It's not just something that was arbitrarily stated. It's something that's backed up with a history. But with that, I hope that does.
Greenland is dangerous to go to as China, according to the State Department. It's also, they're both highlighted in yellow.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Are they seriously like putting Greenland on some type of watch list because they were a little upset that we wanted to annex their country for a while or something?
The Greenland people might beat you. It's like, no, like,
hell, they might want to at this point. I'm not sure.
Let's see here. Where's the map? Where's the map? Let's see. Before you go, I don't want to. Let's see. I don't want to go anywhere. I'm happy here in America. Let me go find their map, though. This ought to be it. Yeah, here we go. So, what was the reasoning behind? Let's see. Exercise increased caution in Greenland due to environmental hazards posed by extreme weather conditions and limited emergency services. So that's the whole reason why they're considered that. So let's go look at China. What's up with the Chinese? What's up with the Chinese? So let's see. Exercise increased caution when traveling to mainland China due to arbitrary enforcement of local laws, including in relation to exit bans. Let's see. Exercise reconsider travel to the Macau Special Administrative region due to a limited availability to provide emergency consular services. Exercise increased caution when traveling to Macau SCR due to the arbitrary enforcement of local laws. That's interesting. But why is most of Western Europe yellow? Like, look at this. Eastern Europe is considered safe. It's literally in the Russian steamroller's path if a war started. It's very safe, though. Why is Britain yellow? Let's go look. Terrorism. Oh, so this must be the
actually, that's a valid reason.
Let's see. What about France and Germany? Terrorism and civil unrest. Oh, that's France is always in a state of perpetual civil unrest. That's nothing new. What about Germany? Terrorism. Okay, so what about Poland's actually considered to be a fine and dandy place. Yeah, it's like there's nothing.
Yeah, Poland doesn't play around, man. They keep it nice and civil. It's very orderly in Poland. You got to respect them for that.
Japan and South Korea are considered to be safe places to go. Funnily enough, Vietnam's actually considered to be a very safe place to go, as well as Taiwan. I like how the Department of State does recognize Taiwan as a independent country on the map, though. You know, like how we don't officially recognize them as an independent country. On this map, we sure as hell are.
Yeah, it's crazy. Honestly, I wouldn't want to visit Taiwan, even if somebody like said, "Oh, well, I'll pay completely for your trip to Taiwan. Go check it out. Go film it." I'd be like, I maybe might go to Taiwan, but it would have to be good timing, though. I wouldn't want to show up when the Chinese actually start invading or something. That would be a little bit sketchy.
Yeah, you know, that probably wouldn't be good. Also, I like how the only country that we broke down by region was Mexico. We literally have different travel advisories for every single Mexican province. That's
basically the way it works. Basically, it's controlled by each region. It's controlled by a different cartel, so that's the way it works.
Yucatan's very safe. Campeche and Yucatan, as safe as can be. Let's see here. Oh yeah, Sinaloa is not safe. Like, just want to make that clear for everyone. Still not safe. Don't go there. But Guerrero, It's also not safe as well. But this is actually Mexico City. Mexico City seems to be at the same safety level as most other places. A little bit interesting with that, but pretty much most of Africa is considered to be unsafe, or at least the major population areas are mostly considered unsafe, except for I think South Africa just technically renamed themselves to something else recently. I'm still going to call them South Africa, and most of the Middle East is unsafe, but Kuwait's safe and Qatar is safe. Entirely safe. Although the Hamas terrorist leaders themselves pretty much hang out in Qatar, it's safe. I don't understand that one. The
I
UAE.
understand that one completely.
Oh yeah, what about it?
You know, Qatar, where the United States and the United States government's good buddies with Qatar. You know, they get preferential status. They get the nice blue treatment right there. They get the totally safe treatment. Feel free to go to Qatar. There's nothing to worry about. It's not like Qatar just got attacked by Iran or anything.
Nah, dude, it's totally safe. It's not like it's an active war zone like Israel or something, like that'd be wild. Or any other country in the Middle East at this point, or Egypt, which is a hellhole to travel to, because they just treat tourists like crap. Don't ever travel to Egypt. That's kind of a golden rule. But yeah, pretty. This is the only country, by the way, outside of, I believe this is Senegal. Yeah, this is Senegal. This is the only country in all of Africa that's actually perfectly safe to travel to right now. Um, but the rest of them are pretty much at the same threat level here in the southern part of Africa that Europe is in at the moment. But this one's totally safe. Zambia is completely safe. Zambia has a very big tourism industry, by the way, if y'all don't know. A lot of safari hunts, just general like safari travel in general. That sort of thing's a big thing in Zambia. So they actually have a very invested interest in keeping Zambia politically and at least criminally stable. So that's why they're generally considered to be wildly safe, is because a lot of Zambia's income and revenue comes from the tourism industry. So to keep tourists coming in, they have to keep it incredibly safe. Unlike other countries like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is an absolute hellhole, and there's always some sort of war going on somewhere in the literal like jungles of the Congo between some warlords and the central government. It's never going to stop down there because there's no way to consolidate control in a country like that, because there's no infrastructure to expand central government control into the jungles. So the jungles are always going to be run by warlords, which are always going to be fighting with the central government. So the Democratic Republic of the Congo, probably in our entire lifetime, will never make it off of the level 4 do not travel list for that reason. Unless if the infrastructure completely was upgraded in the Congo and they were able to actually send out police and other kinds of security forces into those regions continuously to put the warlords down, it's never going to change. But anyways,
Honestly, if they would just give people like global gun rights and you could like conceal carry wherever you went, all these places would be blue. If you could have that, at least somewhat. Maybe not some. Like China, I think would still be yellow when it comes to the like country mapping system here. And also, let's see here. Actually, quite a few countries would still be in yellow actually, because it's just not safe. Even if you were able to be armed for your own protection and defense, it would still be unsafe.
hmm. I don't know. I mean, I think honestly, man, if you gave guns in most of these places, I think it actually might make it worse. In America,
Could be,
in
depending
America,
on how trigger happy somebody is.
in America, we respect our gun rights and we exercise them lawfully. In some other countries, I think some people would get the gun in their hand and then they'd envision themselves to be the next great warlord of the Congo. Like, honestly, like, it's like, I think that might be more devastating to some areas than it would be in others. Oh my God, especially if you did that in the Middle East. Dude, imagine how many different splinter groups of the Houthis would pop up overnight in Yemen.
Oh man, that would actually be bad right there. That would be terrible.
Yeah,
I meant like travelers having the defensive weapons. By the way, I didn't mean like giving them to the folks that are already there or nothing like that. Like they don't get free weapons. Like they got to pay for those.
you got a point. You got a point. Also, I like how, Matthew, they didn't put like a level 4 do not travel to Tibet or Western China, which generally you shouldn't travel to right now. I like how China's just like, it's safe, but they don't give you like, do they give you the descriptions like, don't go to Tibet, don't go to, this is all they have actually. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, they just have Hong Kong and everything. So they don't have anything on, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, so, yeah, they actually do have a little statement for that.
Honestly, most of these places would be safe if you were just smart about where you went, and as long as you didn't run your mouth on the internet like we do about China and North Korea and things like that. Now, if somebody like us showed up there, there's a 50-50 chance they might have maybe flagged us or something already, and they might want to have a word with us or something if we showed up there. But for just the average person, as long as you're not going to like North Korea or something, you would generally be okay traveling around because you're not looking to like harass just the usual people or something. As long as you're smart about not going down back alleys and stuff like that in sketchy cities or something, you'd generally be safe. But if you go to a place and you don't have the right mindset, like some people like the young man did in North Korea, and you do stupid stuff, you're naturally going to get in trouble. And that even goes for allied countries. If you go to an allied country and do something stupid and you get in trouble with the law, you're going to be in a bad fix there too, because you don't know their laws, you don't know their system, and you're foreign. You're not from there. So, it's just about the mindset when you go places. As long as you're not being stupid, you should be all right.
Yeah, I think that generally be like the prevailing rule. Also, do they have a? Oh my God, they actually have a travel advisory for Liechtenstein. Look at that. Do they have one for the Vatican? Uh,
Vatican's in yellow? Like, I thought the Vatican was safe.
Apparently it's just a part of Italy. Oh no, actually, what? Why in the world does it get a level 2? Oh, so they don't actually have a page for it. So
They don't have nothing, man. You gotta watch out for the Pope, man. He has bad days sometimes. He wakes up and chooses, to start, putting the hurt on some people. That's a joke, by the way. I'm just joking. Just joking.
Dude, honestly, man, considering that Pope Leo is an American pope and he's from Chicago, like, dude, he like when World War III comes, dude, and he hears like the gunfire in the streets of Rome, he's gonna be like, man, this shit's so real. Like, and everyone's gonna be like, what did you say, Your Holiness? Like, they're gonna be like, what? Like, he's gonna be like, man, I used to hang around Oblak. Like, this
I
is
tell you
old
what,
to me. But
man, bringing Chirac to the Vatican. I tell you what, it's a
man,
whole new day.
dude, like this ain't your normal pope. This is an American pope, folks. And not only that, one from Chicago. He brings the Tommy gun to him, to the basilica. Like, he's not playing around. But
Not
anyways,
really, not really, not
we're
really.
just kidding. We're just kidding. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of our news for the night. But a big thanks to all of y'all so much once again for support. And if you have thrown in a super chat, we will be getting to it before the end of the night. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into the rest of our news. And moving on into Britain, we were able to hear that they're getting ready for war, as they're now stating that they must build bomb shelters. According to the former British Army head, General Sir Patrick Sanders, no relation to the Sanders here in America, Britain must build bomb shelters immediately to prepare for war with Russia in the next 5 years. The Germans have also stated, and specifically the most German general that exists in the modern day, Major General Freuding, has stated that the first Ukrainian long-range missiles financed by Germany will arrive in the armed forces of Ukraine by the end of July. For some reason, whenever I look at this guy has a very intense stare. I have a feeling that he's reliving the entirety of Germany's military history from the medieval era to the present day every minute. Because he looks like that's what's going through his mind most of the time. But I respect him for that. I bet you he's pretty good at what he does. But nevertheless, we will be moving on from Major General Freuding and on into the rest of our Ukraine war news, as we were able to see that more Russian drones flew over southern Belarus again today.
Or they're starting to use Belarus as like a drone corridor to attack Ukraine or something?
It looks like it, as a matter of fact. It actually does look like it. Outside of that, we were able to confirm that a new Ukrainian drone was spotted over Russia today. It actually looks kind of like an X-Wing, and a lot of people are pointing that out today. But beyond that, it appears to be a semi-jet, semi-propeller-powered UAV. Apparently, the Russians have called one of the Ukrainian drones a corn cob, because the Russian mind cannot comprehend using toilet paper. They still wipe their ass with corn on the cob. But to a combat fighter aircraft, only smaller in size, it has a warhead, and it flies at an altitude of several kilometers, so it's actually thousands of feet up. For the entire time of the SVO, this is the first time such UAVs have been detected so deep in the rear, which is nothing new for the Russians. But moving on from that and on to our next bit of news, we also were able to clearly confirm damage to the Energia factory in the Luhansk region, which was hit about a week or two ago. We could see the damage to the roof right there, once again showing clear impacts and hits. Outside of that, and inside of Ukraine itself, we also were able to see the Rheinmetall Skynex system. This really cool little machine shooting down some Shaheds in last night's attack. We're going to have to mute the Tarkov-esque music, but we can see here the Skynex system engaging and destroying the Shaheds with extreme ease. This system is absolutely sick. We see them getting out a blast, and there goes the Shahed, literally into pieces.
3.
Here comes the fourth one. That one blew up. But there was the fourth one. 4. Boom. They need to add, like, the meme boom sound effect every time they put up a new number in drone. But there went another, once again exploding.
That's a pretty potent little system right there, and it also looks good to boot, so that's nice. The Germans build good stuff.
I saw someone joking about getting lost in Memphis. Don't get lost in Memphis.
No.
Memphis is a scary place.
You will actually get shot, like, if you go down the wrong street in Memphis. Like, Memphis is, like, pretty unsafe.
You know, some people always say, you know, whenever they look at the horrors of war, they say, does God hate his creation so badly that he turned his back on him? And then my answer to that is no. The only people he turned his back on are Memphis, because I don't know what happened to Memphis, but Memphis is truly one of the worst. But outside of that, and moving on from that little bit of news, and into the rest of the news we were able to see up in the Sumy region that the Ukrainians were taking more ground. We were able to hear that the 9th Motorized Rifle Regiment has reportedly failed to assist the 30th Regiment in breaking the encirclement, and according to them, counterattacks is now fully encircled, with water and ammo only being delivered by drones, meaning that the Russian garrison inside of counterattacks, which is incredibly small at this point, has a very short time left and will most likely be destroyed over the next coming days if they are not able to break the Ukrainian encirclement, which it doesn't appear that they will be able to. Outside of that, and inside of the Belgrade Oblast, we were also able to confirm that a Ukrainian drone hit a stadium inside of the city of Belgrade. Here's the clip. There was the hit. It appears that it was interfered with or something along those lines, but the stadium did catch on fire afterwards. And that's the end of that clip. But hey, looks like Belgrade will be without a football stadium for some time. Outside of that, we also were able to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours, and we were able to see that the losses were good. Miss DC keeper of the record stated that 245 drones is the 7th highest daily loss, and 0 tanks and other categories are below the 7-day averages. But it does look quite good, and it does appear that as of the past 24 hours, 1,070 Russian drones were wounded and killed. Well, actually, soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 1 APC. I don't know why I'm stuttering so hard at this point. 90 supply trucks, 31 artillery systems, and 245 drones. Beyond that, today was a fairly decent day. Not an amazingly good day, but fairly decent. Moving on from that and into the Kupiansk area, we also got to see the Ukrainians fighting the Russians in Kharkiv. This is in the Kharkiv Oblast. We see the international.
It's all nice and green now. I mean, it's just like very good looking, even though the trees in the winter were looking really, really bad.
Honestly, they were. We see them moving through the tree line here. And I see a lot of people talking about their opinions on Memphis. A lot of American cities, in my personal opinion, have degraded in quality and have gone downhill over the past few decades. It doesn't really matter what type of government or administration you find in the cities. It's just the plight of the current cityscape in the country because of the shifting way that the economy worked. A lot of the major industries that propped up the tax base for these cities is gone, or it's completely changed or heavily reduced. And so a lot of these cities that once relied pretty much entirely on industry for their tax base, that tax base has disappeared. So they're not really able to keep up the cities. A lot of the folks that work there and were counting on those jobs don't have jobs anymore. So the areas degrade because no one has money. It's a rough situation. A lot of cities have got to find the way forward from this point. A lot of them aren't really doing that too well because it's not necessarily an issue of bad administration. It's more so a situation of the local economies of these cities did not evolve when they needed to. They pretty much allowed the economy to collapse, and now they're trying to pick up the pieces. That's really what's happened, at least in my opinion, in most major cities. But we see here the Ukrainians continuing to fight through the tree lines. Of course, the heavy underbrush in the tree lines makes fighting fairly challenging.
What is that he's holding on to? Did you see that? Was that an antenna?
That was a radio, actually, with a lengthened antenna. Kind of like a walkie-talkie. But that's the end of that clip right there. And moving on from that and on into our next one, we were also able to see a Pantsir S1 that was also destroyed by Ukrainian forces in this area. We're going to be muting the Captain Sparkles music intro that we just had there, but we can see the Ukrainian drone coming in and getting ready to cook a Pantsir. And we can see them slamming them right here. Really, honestly, folks, I think the only way to fix the issue with a lot of major cities in the country is to find a way to get people better paying jobs. Really, that's the whole issue with the country right now, is that a lot of people are not getting good paying jobs at the moment, and there's a heavy lack of the open availability of good paying jobs for most American citizens at the moment. If you fix that problem, a lot of the other problems would generally fix themselves, and then the problems that are left are going to be a lot smaller and easier to manage, because the cities will get their tax base back, people will be put back to work, they'll be making money, and with money comes better things. It generally would be a pretty easy way to, well, it sounds easy, but it's actually really difficult to fix. That's the problem. It's easier said than done, but that generally would be the issue. But beyond that, I also understand that we've asked y'all another question about that former British Army leader and his statements from today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so to reiterate the question one more time, it says a former British Army leader warns Britain to build bomb shelters immediately to prepare for an imminent Russian war, in his opinion. And what are your thoughts about the former British Army leader's statement? So about 64% said it's a real warning and very serious, while 18% said it's fear-mongering, so we should ignore it, and 11% said, I need more info on this to really come to a good conclusion. So I would say the fact that Russia has threatened Britain multiple times over, and the fact that Russia is apparently and seemingly moving toward a war against Europe, I would say that it's perfectly reasonable to start building bomb shelters, because even if something bad doesn't happen, it's better to be prepared than behind the 8 ball if something does pop off in Europe. And at this point, I would say the odds of something popping off are really rising quick, because even the Russians in their legislature are saying that they want to go to war with Europe. So with all these different people saying that, and also Putin himself making actions, overt actions, to move that direction, I would say every country in Europe and also Britain should also start building bomb shelters and preparing for the worst case scenario just to play it safe. So I'm with the 64%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm with the 64% as well. I think that it's a real warning and it's a serious impending threat at the moment, and that Britain should be focusing on civil preparedness, much like every other country in Europe should also be doing that as well. And so with that, we are going to be moving on down into the central area of the northern front at Svatove, where we were also able to hear that a lithium mine that was promised under the mineral deal has actually been seized by the Russian army today. Outside of that, and further down towards the Chasiv Yar area, we were also able to see the Ukrainian 101st Guards Brigade of the General Staff dropping munitions, bombs, onto the Russians. In Ukraine, the Ukrainians buy bombs to drop on Russians, especially soldiers. Here we can see the soldiers provided by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea being obliterated by Ukrainian drone bombs. They are yummy.
Also, by the way, Ms. Disa said preppers will be popular soon. They will be popular soon. People that were never preppers will soon be getting into prepping because of all the chaos going on. I can only imagine, I haven't checked on it recently, but I can only imagine, like, for example, there's one major thing preppers love to buy in mass whenever things like start popping off that are concerning to people is they go buy a ton of ammo, they go buy a bunch of like reserve food, and they buy like things like knives and things that are viewed as survival tools. It may or may not, help in a realistic scenario in a country like America, if you're having to survive. In reality, it wouldn't ever really get that serious, in my opinion, but it makes people feel better to buy things like that, to feel like they're prepared at least. But I imagine those companies are going to have massive orders coming in from around the country and around the world probably very soon. And also, Champ said toilet paper. I don't know why, but people love to hoard toilet paper whenever things go haywire as well. Like, for some reason, people won't hoard stuff like beans or something, but they'll go hoard toilet paper for whatever reason. I don't know.
Because toilet paper will be like a currency at that point. People love to wipe their ass with the silky smooth toilet paper. I don't really get that logic, because it's like, Honestly, I'd be fiending for some beans, beyond that, honestly.
It's like you can't find alternatives to food. Like if you're out of food, you're out of food. That's the end of it. But it's like, toilet paper. There was a point in this country when we didn't have toilet paper for a very long time. That toilet paper is a modern concept for the most part. And the reason why people, like to hoard it, I'm like, that's kind of indicative of like some people's priorities lying at the wrong place. I'm like, I'm not sure if you're getting how a real like prepping scenario would actually work if you're buying tons of toilet paper.
While these preppers are spending hundreds of dollars hoarding useless smooth paper, I went and did the ultimate prepping and got myself a bidet. Kiss my ass. Literally. I'm just kidding, by the way. I don't have a bidet. I use toilet paper like everyone else. But honestly, I don't get the whole obsession with, hoarding the toilet paper. To me, it doesn't make too much sense. But we can see here the Ukrainians are targeting and knocking out some Russian forces in the very outskirts of Syria. Dang, that was 1 million antennas. Did you see that? That was like Antenna City up there. Hold up. Let me see if I can show it. Let's see. It's right after this one. Bam. And then they hit that one. Look at that. Oh my God.
All those antennas and they still lost the war.
Bro, dude, they literally have set up an AT&T communications tower on this thing. That's insane. There's like 30 antennas right there.
Man, they're trying to listen in on the bees, the flies, and everything. The rats, they're listening in on all of it.
Dude, and then at the end, man, they just hear this. Like they hear a drone hitting the radar. It's like, or more so the communication system. It's like, with the shin. Oh, look, they're going for a little radar there. It's a Gaumon radar. It's a counter battery radar. We can also see a little drone that was trying to ride around. The Ukrainians blew that up, went out of their way to destroy it. And they also planted a bomb on that one. Oh, look at this. Crazy stuff.
This is a telecoms technician's dream right here. They're getting to see every type of antenna ever made ever. This is crazy. That looked like a 5G antenna. The last one they just hit. Oh, that was a surveillance camera.
Yeah, I was about to say, is that a security camera?
Man, what are they worried about? Somebody looting the rubble? It's like there's nothing here to loot.
Dude, the Russians be putting up more security cameras than were in that one jail in New York City. That's crazy. I mean, there's a security camera. Anyways, y'all get the gist. Moving on from that and on down towards the Konstantinivka area, we also get to see a close call. Take a look at this close call. And there was a close call. And that was the end of the clip. Slawa, or Slaw as we like to call it. But moving on from that and on down into our next clip, we also got to see Russian forces getting hit near to the Bucharest front. Take a look at it. It's from the Wild Hornets unit. Bam. Here comes another one.
Someone said in the live chat, I have a question. When the paper runs out, the toilet paper runs out and your stock is gone, then what? Then you request your stocks in paper format, so that way you can use the stocks as the toilet paper at that point.
Yeah, you exercise your apocalypse stock options to get more toilet paper.
I shall trade you 200 Disney stock for that pile of beans there.
But you know what'd be smarter, folks? Dried corn cobs. Because you can boil them and, get the corn and then use the corn cob as the toilet paper like everyone used to do. So, that seems smarter to me because it's kind of like a dual purpose thing. You can get the food off of it first and then use it pretty much as toilet paper afterwards. Seems a little bit smarter to me. Hell, honestly, the corn industry in an apocalyptic setting might actually be a big one. Because, man, people would be willing to buy corn on the cob to get the food and also get pretty much the second part of it, which is kind of like the toilet paper side of things out of it as well. That wouldn't be too bad of a business. But anyways, with that, we are moving on down to the Vasilivka, where we got to see them dropping bombs on the Russians. And also, I see a lot of people asking very messed up questions. It's to wipe with. Like the people in the day used to. That was a fairly normal thing to, wipe your ass with, was a corn on the cob, like a cob of corn sort of a thing with no corn on it. That's what people used to do back in the day. No joke.
Huh.
I see some people saying corn cob sucks, believe me. Yeah, but if you've run out of toilet paper, that's like the next best thing. Like, do you want to like wipe your butt with a leaf every day? Like, I wouldn't, me personally. I'd like that. I would like that nice gritty sandpaper texture of the corn on the cob. But moving on from that on up into Kyiv, it's time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1,235 of the war. And so, without further ado, folks, here is the speech. Peach!
Speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Протягом дня тривали роботи в різних регіонах нашої держави від Харкова до Львова після російських ударів. Росіяни продовжують застосовувати цю їхню специфічну тактику терору проти нашої держави, завдаючи ударів концентровано по тому чи іншому місту, по тому чи іншому нашому регіону. Наповнення таких ударів вони намагаються тримати на рівні близько 300 шахедів. У ніч на суботу було 339 шахедів. Вже ближче до вечора сьогодні знов повітряні тривоги, знов шахеди в небі. Значну частину наші воїни збивають, але, на жаль, не всі. Крім того, російська армія продовжує використовувати також сотні спеціальних дронів-імітаторів, шахедів в кожному своєму ударі. Завдання цих дронів – перевантажити протиповітряну оборону та ускладнити збиття шахедів. Це їхній свідомий і підлий терор. На жаль, минулої ночі були загиблі від російського удару, 2 загинули в Чернівцях. Мої співчуття рідним та близьким. Ще десятки людей постраждали у Чернівцях, також на Львівщині, у Харкові. Усім надається необхідна допомога. Є пошкодження на Волині. Ми робимо все, щоб Україна отримала якнайбільше засобів для збиття дронів, для збиття ракет. Наближаємо домовленість. І це буде багаторівнева домовленість щодо нових систем Петріот та ракет до них. Вкладаємось у власне виробництво, передусім дронів, в тому числі дронів-перехоплювачів. Будемо продовжувати наші активні дронові операції на російській території у відповідь на їхні удари. І, як завжди, будемо діяти асиметрично, і це ефективно. Провів я зараз нараду з міністром оборони України. Умєровим детально обговорили відносини з нашими партнерами щодо постачання. Готуємо деякі нестандартні наші кроки, щоб розширити підтримку для України. Підтримку саме для захисту життя. Також обговорили виконання домовленостей щодо оборонних пакетів, ситуацію по контрактуванню дронів. Доручив контрактувати всі доступні обсяги тих типів дронів, які зараз пріоритетні. Дякую і нашим виробникам в Україні, і нашим партнерам в Америці, і нашим партнерам в Європі за готовність працювати максимально швидко для зміцнення нашої системи дронів і для захисту України, і для активних дій проти Росії. Також маємо дати нову динаміку роботі Міністерства оборони України. Багато в чому нову динаміку нашої дипломатичної роботи, зокрема зі Сполученими Штатами Америки. Рішення щодо цього будуть оприлюднені найближчим часом. Говорив також з головою Верховної Ради України Русланом Стефанчуком про засідання українського парламенту наступного тижня. Дуже важливо, щоб засідання були результативними. Вже був ухвалений закон про множинне громадянство, і це вагоме питання, зокрема для тих, хто воює заради України. Дуже очікую розблокування цього закону, щоб невідкладно його підписати. Також вже підготовлені два значних рішення щодо міжнародних угод. Передусім, угода про створення спеціального трибуналу щодо злочину російської агресії. Її треба ратифікувати. І теж варто підтримати вихід нашої держави з Оттавської конвенції про міни. Росія ніколи не була учасницею цієї конвенції та дуже активно використовує всі типи мін, і нам в Україні потрібен паритет у захисті. Зокрема, це політичні та юридичні основи такого паритету. Фактично увесь регіон Центральної та Східної Європи, всі, хто поруч з Росією, переглядають ставлення до мін. І це абсолютно зрозуміло. Також вже підготовлений до другого читання законопроект про військового омбудсмена. І цей новий системний крок потрібен для того, щоб в армії впроваджувались необхідні зміни. Буду вдячний народним депутатам, які підтримують на цьому тижні ці та інші надзвичайно важливі для нашої держави рішення. Дякую всім, хто з України. Слава Україні!
Героям слава.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1235 of the world news, or the news from around the world. And it's time for us to move on to the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, is it a fun time to get to chit-chat with all of y'all. We get to talk about literally anything and everything that y'all would want to talk about. Literally anything and everything at all. And, of course, we'll be addressing the super chatters first, but after that, we'll be getting to as many live chats as we can physically handle, time permitting, of course. But nevertheless, Matthew, I understand that we've asked another question. I believe it's something about Taurus of some sort. I believe that's a vehicle of some kind, Matthew, isn't it? Like a Taurus, like a something, you know? Like
Old Ford.
Yeah, Ford Taurus, yeah. Tell us what people are talking about with that Ford Taurus there, Matthew, and what are people thinking about it? What are you thinking about it?
All right, so we do have a poll, our last poll of the night running, that says Germany says long-range weapons are to hit far behind Russia's lines, and they will arrive in mere weeks by the end of July. And what are your thoughts? 74% said Germany is sending the Taurus missile, while 12% said Germany is sending new drones for Ukraine to use, and 6% said it's probably a bunch of hype. And I believe that Germany is sending the Taurus. That was something that had been discussed before the new chancellor took office in Germany, and that is something we were expecting as well. Now, the one part that is a bit confusing to me, though, is Germany had already classified their weapon shipments to Ukraine. So now the German general has come out and stated that long-range weapons will arrive in weeks. So technically, I guess it's meaningless that they classified the weapons, because even though they didn't state what was heading there officially, we basically know what's heading there. So, you know, it's kind of classified, it's kind of not. I guess, I don't know, kind of a little bit interesting on that front. Another aspect as well is we did see a brand new drone in Ukraine today, this new X-Wing looking drone like off of Star Wars or something. One thing that people forget is Ukraine is a very fertile battleground for testing U.S. weapons as well. So don't immediately assume that it's something from Germany or something from maybe another allied country. It could very well as much be something from the United States that we're testing in a real live battlefield scenario and sending it to Ukraine to use it first to get feedback, and then research and develop that weapon even further domestically here in the United States. That could be it as well. But as for the German shipments, I believe it is the Taurus. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that in my personal opinion, I believe that the Germans are most likely going to be sending Taurus missiles. It's the last weapon system that they have not provided, and considering that they made the weapon shipments classified, I would generally have to believe that there probably is a really high chance that the reason why they made it classified is that they're going to be sending the Taurus. They just don't want people to publicly know that, but it's going to be sent. So that would generally be my belief as well. But once again, I also do have to agree with Matthew. The United States is, and will most likely be using here really soon, the Ukrainians as a weapon test bed to see how older weapon systems are actually working in combat, to try and alter or update new weapon systems that have been just recently introduced in prior years or are going to be created here incredibly soon. So I would also have to say that as well, is that just because some new stuff might be showing up in Ukraine, it doesn't guarantee that it's entirely German in its origin. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what we have at the moment. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the questions. What do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping right back into our super chat questions and our live chats after we get through our super chats. The first one here goes to Chargy, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Chargy, for that support. And we appreciate that very, very much. A long-time channel legend right there. And he said 2 more number 2 combos for the boys. And he puts in the island, well, not the island, it's the palm tree. I don't know why I couldn't think of the name. And the burger, too, for In-N-Out Burger. And Chargy, I actually got 2 of those double burgers when I was out in Salt Lake City a while back. I got 2 of them, and they were fantastic. I love In-N-Out Burger. It's really good. I know some people hate on them, but I personally think it's fantastic. Now their fries, and not anything really to write home on the fries, but the burgers are crazy good. Like I love those. But thank you very much, Chargy. And I shall, when I'm back in Salt Lake City one day, get some more of those. And thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the amazing support, Sharky. And we will make sure to get some number 2 combos. I've still never had In-N-Out. I really want In-N-Out. I still haven't gotten it. So hopefully when we go back out there, I will be able to get some because I would love to have some In-N-Out burger. I've heard great things about it. I've heard many great things. People have been saying great things about it, but I've never been able to have one myself. So hopefully I'll be able to go out there and have one myself personally. So a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And also I saw someone say Five Guys burgers are better. Not for the price. Like, not for the price. Now, like, Five Guys burgers are good, but they're not that good. Like, they're not like $14 or $15 good. And that's what, like, kind of prices we're getting for them around here these days. And I just cannot justify $15 for the burger. And they're also really cutting back on the fries at Five Guys too, like the extra fries that they would load into the bag. Strategically, it was a part of their business model. They pretty much rolled back on that too. And their fries aren't even really that good. Like, their fries are mid at best, maybe even below mid. And you get them in, like, smaller amounts. They're still equally expensive. And then the burger's really expensive too. So my personal opinion on Five Guys, it's just overpriced. And for that reason, it ends up being overrated, because for the price, it's not really justifying, like, the taste and everything, in my opinion. Like, man, Matthew put in, Five Guys gonna have to let me get 5 easy payments. Like,
Can they give me some Klarna? What is that, like, company that lets you split it up into, like, installments, like monthly installments? I need some Klarna on that burger.
Yeah, man, like, honestly, like, they're insanely expensive. And, you know, let's see. $15 for a burger at Five Guys, that's a fest. Yeah, like that's the thing, like, that I'm saying, Nerdo, is that it's insanely expensive. Like, how much was an In-N-Out burger, Matthew, just per chance? Like, the meal, like,
$5.
$5, yeah. So it's $5 versus about, like, 14 for a Five Guys burger. I mean, it's just like that's 3 times the cost for about the same value, at least in terms of caloric intake. And if you look at it like that, it's like, you know, an In-N-Out burger, you're actually getting a lot more bang for the buck there, at least from what I'm seeing. But I hope that does address that well. I do thank you for support, Sharky, and supporting our In-N-Out Burger Fund, because I really do want one. And also, Rebecca Bruce said everything is expensive. Yeah, everything is expensive these days. Like, it's just getting ludicrous. Like things that used to be cheap are expensive now, and it's like, dang, it's like, that's rough. But with that, we are going to be moving on into the next one.
All right, and jumping into our next super chats here, this one goes to Keymaster, who puts in a $20 donation, and also we had a 20 from Alaska as well. 2 channel legends, and thank you very much, Keymaster in Alaska, for that support. There's no comments to address, but we appreciate that very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you for the support. I thank you greatly for the support and helping us to keep this channel running. It's a Keymaster in Alaska, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to get to talk to locksmiths in the final frontier. See what I did there? I mixed together the 2 super chats to try to come up with a joke. It wasn't really that good of a one, but oh well. But still, I do thank y'all both massively. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Jocelyn White, another channel legend, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Josh, as well, for that support once again, and it's good to see you in the chat. And Josh said, as always, amazing coverage of the news, and you gentlemen deserve more than I can give. And I can't thank you enough for your years of dedication. And take a question from the chat, and LLT, LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Jocelyn White, and thank you for enjoying our coverage of the news. We always love to work hard on this thing. It's a high pride and honor that we get to. And once again, Jocelyn White, any support is great support to us. We're happy that folks just enjoy the channel enough to support it at all. Whether we were making millions doing this or whether we were making tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, we're happy to do it either way. And I get to thank you so much for enjoying the channel and massively supporting it and helping it to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it rolling, and we especially wouldn't have been able to keep it rolling without folks like you who have continuously supported this channel over the years and helped us to be able to pay our bills and keep the lights on behind the scenes to make sure that we can press on with this thing being our full-time daily job. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. But really quickly, I have to address something because I keep seeing a few people doing this, and I want to address it really quickly because, you know, like it's something that's kind of starting to irk me a little bit. And as people trying to recruit us to make a political stand, like I don't know what it is recently at least, but for some reason, some people, and some of them are people who have been with the channel for a little bit, and I keep seeing it in the chat, keep on acting like now is the time that this channel has to make a stand, like we either have to become a Republican or a Democrat overnight. And to make this really clear, because I cannot make this clear enough, there is never going to be a time in this channel's history where we're going to go from being completely unbiased on a domestic political level to acting like everything has to be within a Democratic or Republican framework. That's never going to happen. And it's getting a little bit tiresome because I see one particular person who keeps on bringing it up, and they've been bringing it up for 2 hours the whole time that they were here tonight. They brought it up in the first 10 minutes I saw it, and I made note of it to Matthew. I was like, that's starting to get old. We're going to have to start curtailing that. I saw it in the middle of the show when we're just talking about world news, and then I saw it literally right at the end of the speech when we were going to the question segment. And I was like, that's like, I'm getting very tired of it. Like, this particular person keeps on, like, they're going out of their way. And I just want to say it's this, like, there's a couple, like maybe 4 people I've been seeing doing this, but there's one in particular that's been doing this daily now for about a week, and it's getting really old. Like, I just got to say that personally. Like, I only have so much patience, like, even if people have been around for a while, of people trying to act like they are personally going to try and turn this channel into a political channel. If you want to watch a Democrat or Republican aligned YouTube channel, there are a lot out there that do not have the Enforcer name, and this channel is never going to attach the Enforcer name to the Republican or Democrat parties. It's not going to happen. This is a news channel. We report the news here, and we especially report foreign policy. Then we report the news no matter what it is. If an action's good, it's good. It does not matter whether it was a Republican or a Democrat who made it, and it also doesn't matter if the decision is bad. If it was a Republican or a Democrat who made the decision, it's still equally bad if it's a bad decision. That's just how it works here on this channel. If you do not like that, I would have to personally encourage you to find another channel, because this channel is uncompromising and it's no politics, especially on a domestic level approach that we have had for 3.5 years. That's not going to be changing anytime soon. And I personally don't like going through the show and like reading the chat, and the chat has many great things coming through it. And then every once in a while, I see someone who keeps on with this really strong push, trying to act like, in particular with this one person, that this channel has to become a like a Democrat channel. And other times there's been people trying to turn it Republican. But with this one person, they keep on trying to push it, and I'm like, we're not going to do that. Like if you were trying to make an argument to become a Republican channel, we wouldn't do that either. That's just not going to happen. This channel is an American channel. We rise above the party politics. We focus on what's best for the country as a whole, not what's best for a political party. That's just how it's always going to work here. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, but I have to make it clear that I am not pleased at all by statements like that, especially from people who have been here for a while and know our stance on politics. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so Jocelyn White did ask for a live chat question, so we are going to grab one. And also, by the way, K-Dub Janky wants to grab AF Kaplan's live chat, and AF did put one in. So in honor of K-Dub Janky and Jocelyn White, we're going to grab the one from AF Kaplan. And he said, do you think the U.S. would go ahead with selling Patriots to Germany so they can be transferred to Ukraine?
I think so. It sounds as though the United States is fine with doing that, because apparently we were having a strategic shortage of those missiles until someone was willing to pay for them, and then we don't have a shortage. So it appears that that actually will work. The Germans will pay for the Patriots and the missiles and then ship those into Ukraine. It also appears that the Department of Defense has already upped their spending quota for this fiscal year as well to procure about 14,000 interceptors instead of the originally planned 3,600 interceptors, which the United United States had originally planned to acquire over this fiscal year. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat well, and a big thanks to you once again for supporting this channel and helping keep on running, Joshua White, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would never be able to make this channel possible, and I hope we addressed that live chat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, I see some people feeling like they were personally called out by that. We were referring to, I think the enforcer was referring to one guy in specific. He's already left the night, by the way. I'm not sure if the enforcer knew that, but it was one guy in specific that was making wild comments. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Detroit Adam, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Detroit Adam, for that support. He said, LSA, and after the news, please check out the Selfridge ANGB in Harrison, TWP, Missouri. And can't wait for the new F-15EXs and the KC-146s. And also, maybe look up a little base history. Detroit love, guys. And thank you for the best news show on Earth. And LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And let's go Air National Guard Base. Let's go take a look at this. The Selfridge Air National Guard Base is in the Harrison Township in Michigan near Mount Clemens. Let's take a little gander at this. I like the Air National Guard's symbol, by the way. I think the Air National Guard has a baller, sort of like a crest, if you want to call it that. And also, here's a picture from Selfridge. It's pure black. See, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing going on at all at Selfridge. This is right outside of Detroit? Hold up. We got to go find this now. Where in the... Oh, there it is. Oh, shoot. It's literally right outside of Detroit. Wow, that I wonder if that is counted as a combat deployment then. But beyond that, really, actually, it's a pretty clean airbase, actually. Oh, what's this?
That is clean. I like that.
They have a little air museum here. Oh, I like this.
Oh,
look, a Sherman, and it's got a 76 millimeter gun too. That one's actually really nice. Is it like? I feel like someone privately owns that one because it looks like it's in great shape. They also have
it was a Vietnam.
It was a Vietnam. Oh, this fellow right here.
No, not the guy, not him. He might be a Vietnam veteran. I don't know, but no, there's a Vietnam. Look.
Man, it's a Vietnam right there. Look at that. Look at that, dagnabbit. But they also have this F-16, which apparently has a view restriction on it. Apparently, they also have the Mutt and the Thunderstreak and a Tomcat, actually. That's pretty cool. Oh, look at that.
The Iranians would love to have that. The Iranians would be foaming if they could get their hands on that thing.
Bro, every single week there's always these people. They speak Persian. They show up here at this museum, and for some reason they're always coming with a tool set with wrenches and stuff, and just stare at the F-14 for a couple hours and then leave. They're trying to coax themselves into eventually doing it. But I don't think they're doing it yet. But let's see here. Oh, that's pretty neat. I don't know what type of missile that is. It looks like a Nike almost. They have an M113. Those are pretty cool. Let's see here. That's really cool. Is this operational?
Not really sure. What is that? Like a missile control or something, or a radar system?
It's a radar, an approach and departure control radar.
Oh, so it's just like a military version of like a civilian radar or something for like a commercial airport?
It appears so, but that's actually pretty
Okay.
goated. That's actually pretty neat looking. They also have the rotary cannons on display. That's pretty neat. That's pretty cool. Oh, they have a collection of Mutts and Jeeps. That's a real Willys Jeep down here. Well, it might not be a real Willys Jeep because the Willys Jeeps are actually made on contract by multiple companies, but these are GMC Mutts. Because I love a Mutt. Like, these things are really cool. But the M151 Mutts had to be called Mutts because the Jeep name is actually copyrighted and trademarked by the Willys Company. So when General Motor Company, or GMC, actually got the contract to make pretty much the next generation of Jeeps for the Army, they couldn't call them a Jeep, so they had to call them Mutt, which stands for Military Utility Tactical Truck. And that's the reason why these are called Mutts. They're distinctly different than that of the Willys. Like, if you look at the front of them, there's a very clear difference. And honestly, I like the Willys Jeeps better. I think they look better. But, anyways. Oh, they have an Orion. That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. They have that Sherman again. That thing is operational. It actually was moving around when this picture was taken. That's actually really cool. They have a old A-10.
That poor thing's seen better days right there.
Ew.
Oh, I know the name of that, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
I think it's called the Corsair 2. Let me go check. Yeah, it's the Corsair 2 right here.
Those things are just kind of ugly. Like I just like that's why I remembered it because I was like, that is an ugly plane. I don't like those.
Yeah, they're pretty ugly. They also have a Phantom. They have a Wright Flyer, probably a Type A Wright Flyer. They also have a Spad. I like the Spads. Those are pretty cool.
What's he doing next to the propeller like that? Is that dude even human?
Bro, that's a mannequin.
I knew he wasn't human.
Man, just like Zuckerberg. They also have a Weasel.
Man, he drinks coffee recreationally.
I was once human. Well, I still am human. Well, I'm speaking past tense, although I was always human. Like, dude, it's like, dude, you're not making a good case right now, man. Like, just stop while you're behind. But honestly, this museum is actually pretty cool here. But beyond that, let's take a look at the history of this base per the request. So, let's see. Was named after First Lieutenant Thomas E. Selfridge. He was detailed for aeronautic duty in 1908 after being an assistant to Professor Alexander Graham Bell, who was conducting aeronautical experiments in Nova Scotia. He was killed in 1908 while flying as a passenger with Orville Wright at Fort Myer, Virginia. He was the first person to be killed in a crash of a powered aircraft. Oh, that's actually
Damn.
pretty wild. That's unfortunate for him as well. And also really cool to think that he was an assistant to Alexander Graham Bell, who's legendary in the inventive world in the United States. But let's see here. Michigan was acquired by the Packard Motor Car Company. That used to be a big name in American cars, by the way, folks, up until about the 60s. That was a really big one. But unfortunately died a while ago. And they finally tore down the Packard plant, too, that was down here in Detroit. I'm trying to think of where it was. Because it's like a big, long strip of a building. And I'm raking my brain here trying to think of where this thing was. And I cannot find it. Ah, here it was. It was right here. I think this is where the old Packard factory used to be. And they tore the whole thing down, so it doesn't exist anymore. And what you're looking at, I think, is the basement of the building after it was cleared out. A real shame, actually. But anyways, moving on from that, let's see. The interwar period. How about World War II? Let's see, transfer RAF. Let's see. Let's see here. Court martial. I'm trying to read through this so quick. I feel like I'm missing a lot of the historical facts about the space. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and sharing with us this very interesting Air National Guard base, because it certainly does have a very interesting, rich history. There's actually a lot written about it here on Wikipedia, which unfortunately I won't be able to read off quick enough to make it interesting for folks on air, but still really cool nevertheless. A big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that the best we could and went into a really deep rabbit hole about it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Michael Smith, who put in a $15 donation, and Shoshana Gregg, who put in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Michael and Shoshana, for that support, and we do appreciate that very much. We also have a $15 support from Jay Sebastian, and he said, could Ukrainian divers finish it off, referring to the Kerch Bridge? And I mean using rebreathers to get there, and then plant a couple of charges. And no, that I think about it, some sort of underwater drone coupled with depth charges could tear apart the foundation of the bridge struts.
And Jay Sebastian, you're actually only about a month behind the Ukrainians, because they actually did try the submarine with the charges on board, and unfortunately it failed. It did not take down the bridge, so it appears that there will have to be another way of taking down the bridge. But I do thank you for the support, and I hope that does address it the best I can. But I think sending in divers, especially considering that there's no way to actually safely drop them off in the area, would be a very risky venture at best. And so with that, I thank you for support. I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. And unfortunately, I can't read off the breaking news because sadly, we just cannot. This is breaking news. Breaking news. This is breaking news right here that unfortunately we know better than to touch. But thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. And we appreciate that very much. We also have a $10 support from the Wolfman. And he said another good example of the effects of stresses on metal is the Carl D. Bradley and the Daniel J. Morrell, two lake bulk carriers sunk by hull failure due to stress caused by temperature changes and heavy seas.
Oh, wait a minute. I actually know this one. I actually knew this one. I knew it. Hold up. I got to go find the other one, though, because the other one actually split on the surface. The Daniel J. Morel. Let me go pull up that one. The Daniel J. Morel. Oh, hell yeah. I'll be able to find y'all a picture of this. Y'all not going to believe it when you see it. What the hell? Wait a minute. Hold up. There was another one that split on the surface. It wasn't one of these two, but it was very similar in its design. But I be dipped, folks. Cannot find it. But these two vessels did split. Let me see. Ship split in middle at dock. Let's see. Let me see. There was another vessel that also did that. And unfortunately, I don't have the name for this ship. But this is also another example of a stress fracture. And this one was actually a port. So this vessel was made with subpar steel, and this was generally known as an issue. But one thing that they didn't know back in the time, because this happened in, I believe, the late 40s or the early 50s, was the exact metallurgical properties of steel under cold temperatures, which actually makes steel more brittle. So this ship was sitting in harbor, getting loaded with cargo, and all of a sudden, everyone in the port said they just heard like this thunderous explosion, and they looked over from where it came from, which was the ship, and the whole thing had split in two instantly, and both ends started to tilt up towards the bow and the stern, and literally just lifted the center into two. And then the crushing weight of that pushed the two pieces together, and it actually bent up the keel plate down at the very bottom of the ship, which is the backbone, and actually bent it up and crimped it into almost like a chevron shape nearly. It was a really unique sort of a thing. When you brought up those two ships, I actually thought you were talking about this one because it's kind of similar a little bit in its design. But this is an absolutely crazy sort of a thing that does happen with steel, especially when it's under any kind of unforeseen stress. So cold weather, or there's a rapid onloading and offloading of weight, along with that kind of extra brittleness that's brought on by the cold. It can actually lead to immediate stress fractures that are caused by microscopic stress fractures that have been made throughout the entirety of the steel plate. So a little bit interesting with that. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And if y'all don't know, there's actually been some people saying that the reason why the Titanic sank is because it was sailing in those almost sub-zero well, not sub-zero, but below freezing, near frigid waters when it impacted the iceberg, which made the steel far more brittle, and that's actually what led to the ship splitting in two before it sank to the bottom, was that the steel was so brittle that it actually could not support the weight of the uplifted stern, and that's actually what led to its stress fracturing, and that's also something that's seen a little bit, because I believe someone out there has said that the keel plates, where the bow and stern, I believe, divided, or at least on the stern, are bent up slightly, which suggests that the ship actually split, and when it did, most of the force and weight of the two halves of the ship actually pressed onto each other for a brief second, bending up the keel plates, and then the bow made its plunge to the bottom. And so a little bit interesting fact about that. But it's crazy, folks. What people don't know is the amount of advances that have been made in steel making over just the past 70 years. It's been huge, profound. We know how to pre-temper the steel, all sorts of things that we did not know back then. And also to remove sulfur from steel. Sulfur content or higher sulfur contents in steel leads to a higher brittleness and also a higher, I guess you could say, prone rate to steel being so brittle that it could just snap or break like this one under any kind of stress or pressure. So a little interesting with that. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that somewhat well, because that's actually a great example of stress fractures just almost pretty much immediately popping up in brittle steel. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ricky Buffalino, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Ricky, as well for that support as well. And he said, I thought the Russians said the bridges was impenetrable, and someone's going to fall out of a window soon for that.
And you know, someone probably will. There's a lot of people who have fallen out of windows about the Kerch Bridge. I have a feeling that's going to happen again. And what's even wilder is that we never got any video evidence of the impact, but we have clear picture evidence of the damage and clear residual debris of an explosion that happened right on that part of the bridge. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a $10 super chat from Mr. Rhythm, and they said, a little late to the party, and what's Britain up to now?
Let's see. Britain's up to preparing possibly to build bomb shelters in their country because of the inevitability of war in Europe. That's at least what we're hearing at the moment, but that was from a former general, not someone who's currently in the government, but it does appear that there's a move to do that at the moment. And also, I saw someone say Titanic sunk because the watertight compartments were only a few decks high. That is true, but the reason why the ship split in half, because to talk about something, and I have to give a lot of credit to a channel I watch a good bit on this, which is Ocean Liner Designs. They deserve a lot of due credit for this because this is where I get all of this information from on the Titanic specifically, because that's one of their like expert subjects that they study. The Titanic was actually believed for years to have not split in two when it sank, and that's why you'd see that a lot of contemporary examples of the Titanic sinking never showed it splitting in two until the Titanic was discovered in 1985 in two separate pieces. And that's because during the British Admiralty's sinking inquiry after the sinking, when the crew was brought back to Britain to the British inquiry, not the American one, the British wanted to ensure that the story went that the ship did not split in two. So anyone who ever said that the ship split in two, their story was completely discredited because they were just like, that's outrageous. British shipbuilding is the best in the world. There's no way that a ship could have ever split in two that was built in the United Kingdom. That is absolutely outrageous to even suggest such a thing. And so that's why you'd see in movies like Raise the Titanic and others, the ship was always visually shown to be intact because that was what was believed, because the British inquiry laid that out verbatim, that it never split in two. But the fact of the matter is that it did. And I'm trying to see if I can get y'all a good example. Here's actually a 3D scan of the wreckage. So this isn't one of the illustrations that was made that's incredibly famous. This is a real 3D render of what the wreck looked like last year. And somewhere, right back there, well, there's a void, actually. That's something that we won't talk about. But right back near to the rear of the bow, or more importantly, towards the rear of the stern, which is, actually, that's not the stern. That's the other side of the bow. Let me see if I can find y'all the stern, because the stern is the one I believe this was more noticeable on, if I remember the information correct. But the stern actually was the one that had the bent-up keel plate near to the cylinders, or the engines. And let me see here. Titanic stern wreck. Let me see if I can show you all this, or at least a modern example of it. Let's see here. So here's an actual picture of the rear engine, triple expansion steam engines that were near to the stern of the ship. These are actually visually exposed to the open elements at this point in the wreck. But one thing that was interesting to note was that the triple expansion steam engine was actually ripped in two. And to be able to do that, it would take an absolutely insane amount of force, showing that the ship actually ripped in two right around that area, because otherwise the engines would have most likely remained intact. And you can find these cylinders, the cylinders that were ripped off, scattered around the wreck. I think there's two larger ones, and they're in different areas around the wreck. But beyond that, the keel plate somewhere down here, which you can actually see right there because the engine sat directly atop the keel plate, actually is bent up in some areas, which is suggesting that when the ship split in two, possibly because the steel was brittle due to its high sulfur content at the time, the keel plates bent upwards. It also had enough force that it sheared the triple expansion steam engines apart, and then the ship sank. The bow sank, and then the stern would stay on the surface for a little longer, and then it would also rapidly sink as well, and then practically explode on its way to the bottom because of all of the air pockets inside of it. And it would end up looking, this is actually what it looks like today. These are actually paintings, photorealistic paintings that were made of what the stern was believed to look like, which there wasn't really a good view of it up until recently. And then a real 3D scan was made, and it actually looks a lot worse than anyone ever actually believed or anticipated. The air pockets were so destructive as it spiraled to the bottom, and also the impact on the bottom was so destructive, it literally blew out the sidewalls of the hull, and they're pretty much laid out like sheets of blankets off to the side, and most of the decks just pancaked on top of each other. But that is something to show that at the time, metallurgy wasn't as advanced as it is now, because it actually is it's generally understood from all of the information that we have that that the highest quality steel that could be produced in mass was made for the Titanic. The shipbuilders Harlan and Wolff did not cut any corners in the construction of the Titanic. It was built to the most rigorous maritime standards available at the time, but steel making as a science wasn't perfected at that point. And so a lot of steel, even your most advanced steel, still had high sulfur contents compared to modern steel, which made them a lot more brittle, and that means under colder conditions, like the ones the Titanic was sailing in, in, the steel was not able to be subjected to the same kinds of rigors or stress that modern steel could have. So having the rear stern part of the vessel, it's highly likely that when it was out of the water, the steel just could not handle that kind of strain or weight on it, and it literally just snapped in two. That's at least what's believed nowadays, or at least a very strong running theory at the point about the sinking. And another thing that has to be pointed out is that the records of the ship splitting into or not splitting into were from eyewitnesses that were trying to observe the wreck after the, well, not the wreck, but the sinking after the lights went out with a, I believe it was a full moon that night, so there was very little illumination at all of the ship at that point. It's pretty much silhouetted on a black night sky on a black ocean with a completely blacked out ship with no lights on, so it was a little bit difficult for anyone to see. So that's also why it was highly questioned, and a lot of people were discredited for saying that the ship split in two, is because nobody who said either story, whether it's split in two or not, were really able to say whether it was or wasn't, because no one could clearly see it easily. But anyways, with that, I hope that was an interesting rabbit hole for all of y'all about the strength of steel and the kind of steel-making science advancements that have been made over the past few decades. But the Titanic is actually a good example of weakened steel or stress fractures being caused under stress. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, folks, just a little bit of piece of breaking news right here. I just saw a report that came out that apparently the U.S. president is strongly considering allocating a ton of additional funds for military support to Ukraine. That's a new revelation today, and that comes after the statements he had made about a $300 million package being announced very soon. So we're hearing a tentative timeline that on Monday, which is about a day or so away, we'll hear that apparently the president is going to support Ukraine a lot more than previously expected. And here's my prediction. This is my hunch. I have a feeling that Ukraine's about to be funded like they've never been funded before, because I think the president's having a little bit of a shift of his mindset a little bit here, and he needs Ukraine to win this war more than ever. I think he needs that for his personal reasons, and also needs that for a geopolitical reason as well. So we'll probably be seeing a lot of support going toward Ukraine. And remember, right now the president has access to about $3.8 billion in presidential drawdown funds for Ukraine, so he can use all of that money to send to Ukraine without having to get any new type of congressional approval for that money. So Ukraine could be in for one of the biggest packages that they've gotten in a very long time, and this is a very sudden shift by the president. So the timing is interesting, but of course I think we're going to see Ukraine get funded quite a bit. But Enforcer, what's your take?
Do we have a list of support yet?
No list of support. We hadn't even gotten an official announcement of support, but Monday's the big day. Monday, we should hear something.
Interesting. So we will have to wait and see. I'm going to wait till Monday to make any comment on it, because he could reverse his mind, or, stick on it.
I doubt it.
I doubt it as well, but I still want to. I've been bamboozled enough this many times already in just the past half year that I'm like, I'm really going to wait until Monday to see what happens, because nothing could happen on Monday possibly. So we'll see. But maybe you're right. I want to lean towards you're right, but at the same time, I've been burned so many times saying, oh, this is definitely going to happen, and then he does a 180. I'm not really sure, but with that,
it would be quite crazy if the president decided to use the $3.8 billion very rapidly and just like flood Ukraine with weapons, and then Vladimir Putin decides, hey, I don't like that very much, I'm going to have to escalate a little bit, and I'm going to have to escalate rapidly, and all of a sudden a major war starts in Europe. That would be unprecedented. Like, that would be quite wild. I think the U.S. president would be very upset if something like that happened. He would be very upset, because that would take all the focus on domestic issues and put them externally. That would be something that would obviously be awful for everybody if that happened. But Ukraine has to get funded. Ukraine has to get supported. So we might be seeing that in a very big way very soon.
Possibly so. But with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Just a Plumber 3, who said, oh, I put in a 10, first of all. He said, Enforcer might be busting for real. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
And thank you for the support and saying that we bussin' for real. At least we not busting like Will Smith was with his friends trying to get like the right angle and everything. We just bussin'. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Just a Plumber, real like skibbity bop on God, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. Screw you. But anyways, big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I want to address something real quick that a lot of people have been talking about. It's a piece of I'm holding out hope, but unfortunately, I think it might be some bad news. One of our viewers has not been to live chat for a long time. She was a longtime channel legend. It's Marie LSA. I personally not heard from her for a long time, and also she was not in the best of health the last time I spoke to her. So I don't want to say anything without knowing it for a fact, but I do have some concerns about not hearing from Marie for a very long time. So I'm holding out hope, but unfortunately, I have no way to know what has happened. But hopefully, she's okay. But I do see a lot of people asking questions about that. Unfortunately, I don't have any information to give you, but I do hope that she is okay. And maybe we'll learn something here soon. But moving on to our next one, this one goes to Boy, who puts in a 7. He said their fights really put the let's see. Do you see this one, Enforcer? I don't know what this means.
Let's see here. I don't know what that means, unfortunately, Boy Kachina.
I don't either.
I do thank you for support, but we can't read it off considering that we don't know what that means. But I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Esteban Graves, who puts in a 5, and also Detroit Adam, as well as Monster Lab and Plazath, who each put in a $3 support as well. And thank you all very much, Esteban, Detroit, Monstro, and Plazath, for that support, and we appreciate that. We also have a 5 from Ricky Buffalino once again. He said, I just at Smokers, the grassy knoll.
I thank you for support. And you never know. You never know. There might be a list of support, or a list out there somewhere. We just never know. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I would also have to say, because I see a lot of people mentioning that, I hope that everyone does have best wishes for Marie LSA. I hope that she's all right out there. But considering that we haven't heard from her in a while, it is getting a little bit concerning. But every once in a while, some viewers do disappear from the channel for weeks or months, and then they come back. It's just that they got busy or had to take a break or something like that. So hopefully that's the case, and it's nothing too concerning. Although her health wasn't really in the greatest, and there's a decent amount of people in the LSA whose health isn't the greatest. So we're always trying to keep tabs on them, and we usually talk about that at the beginning of the show. We'll be, oh, well, someone isn't here again today. I hope they're all right, and eventually, hopefully, folks just continue to show back up. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. And Sarge said, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And hit the like button, LSA. That is an order. And a massive thanks to you so much once again to LSA Sergeant Figment for always being here and supporting this channel and encouraging folks to hit the like button. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to SD NSO Group Unit 46, who put in a 2, and thank you very much, good sir, as well for that support. We also have a 2 from Quentin Samuels, and he said, I'm a little late. Can you recap for me what's the biggest things that happened?
The Crimean bridge was hit. There's firefights in Syria. The Iranian government appears to still be hardlining on their nuclear program. The North Koreans opened up their tourist village officially today. The North Koreans were able to take some ground in Sumy and also inflicted high casualties on the Russians. And the British are pretty much preparing to get bombed within the next 5 years. So that is really the big news recap. So I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So with that was our last super chat question to get to. So we are early tonight to get to our live chat questions. I'm glad for that because we have some good ones, and I want to be able to get as many of them as we possibly can. So jumping right into our Morse code decoders of the night, we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, and Heroic Fluffiness. They said the Morse code says, if you're going to be pooting around, don't be rushing to get Stalin at the peace talks. And LLT LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And, I had to throw in a cheesy one. I had to throw in a cheesy one eventually. But I do have to say a big thanks to y'all and the Lee Springer Signal Corps for continuing to decipher those Morse code messages daily and getting it right again. It's very impressive to see that y'all get that right continuously, really. And I hope quite duly that y'all do greatly understand that we are very appreciative of y'all's efforts. And so, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it's time for us to move on to those live chats. What do we have, Matthew?
All right, so we have a live chat question from Crispy. He said, what do you think will happen on Monday with the current administration statements? Because he's hyping it up quite a bit. And I would say what we're going to hear Monday, at least in my opinion, and I would say I'm about 65% certain about this. So I think it's likely, but I'm not willing to say it's guaranteed. I think we're going to see a very large Ukraine aid package. And when I say very large, I mean more than $500 million worth of aid being announced for Ukraine. It will be sent through NATO countries, and it will be sent through those NATO countries into the Ukraine border and into the front lines. That's the way it's going to be sold to the American public. But ultimately, though, it will be the United States sending its first new aid package of this brand new administration. On Monday, it'll be announced and put into motion. That's my guess, and I'm about 65% certain about that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say that I would have to kind of agree with Matthew. It might be a massive announcement of support for Ukraine. I have a feeling that it's going to be something big, although I'm not entirely sure on that because there could just be another 180. You know, it's not really like this president is incredibly decisive. Usually there's a lot of waffling that goes on, but outside of that, I have a feeling that it probably is going to be a massive announcement of support because I'm sure many of y'all are paying attention to the internal situation in the country. It's a tumultuous time, at least in the domestic political sphere at the moment, with the support for current folks, stuff like that. To put that very lightly, it's a very tumultuous time at the moment for the American domestic political situation. So because of that tumult, there may be at least a mental concept right now, or the concept of a plan to try and distract everyone by pretty much just ramping up something else to where it takes away from the firestorm that's currently happening at the moment in the country because of this whole thing that has to deal with a Christmas list or something like that. But anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can, but that appears to be the situation at the moment. So I generally have to agree with Matthew, but I also want to throw out the caveat that there's also the chance that you could just do a 180 and then nothing happens on Monday, and then we're told wait 2 weeks again, or something along those lines. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, we have a good follow-up question here from Simbex, who said, can we count on NATO to follow through on helping Ukraine and the U.S. fight Russia? Honestly, I would say between the United States and NATO itself, like sort of excluding the United States from NATO and just looking at Europe and the United States on two different levels, I would say Europe has a much larger chance of helping Ukraine right now, just because the United States has not given a brand new aid package to Ukraine since this new president took office. So Europe has been stepping up more in 2025 than the U.S. has in previous years. So Europe is definitely going to help Ukraine, and also they're going to definitely help us fight Russia. And now, if it comes true on Monday and the U.S. gives an aid package to Ukraine, then I would say NATO is becoming more unified again because we're all on the same page. But it won't be because necessarily it's the right thing to do. It'll be because there's some alternative reasons for doing that. I guess if it comes out to be the same result, I guess that's all we can ask for. But, it would be good if it was done for the right reasons, at least in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that in my personal opinion, and let me make sure to get that one because can you reread
It's
that
in the
one
live
again?
chat. It's Simbeck said, can we count on NATO to follow through on helping Ukraine and the U.S. fight Russia?
I would say yes, primarily because Europe's issue is Russia. So if they weren't fighting the war against Russia, it's going to be falling on their territory anyway. So they are certainly going to be joining in the war against Russia. That is a straight up guarantee. Because if anyone would have to join, it's them because it's their land that they're fighting for. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. I see a lot of people talking about the thing. We're not going to mention it on air too much because to be honest with you, all times might be getting really challenging domestically because of it. But
we're not trying to get locked up.
Yeah, we're not trying to get locked up here because that's probably going to start happening to many people here quite soon because this is quite a serious one. But as many of y'all know, it's not going too well. I'd like to speak about it in a general sort of a way. There was a lot of statements made in the election running up to being president that there was going to be something done about a certain thing, some kind of a Christmas list from Santa in the North Pole. And then when this person got into office, now the story has changed, and Santa Claus never had a Christmas list. As a matter of fact, there was practically no Santa Claus, and Mrs. Claus is apparently up in the North Pole still, locked away by some elves for no reason, at least from what we're understanding at this point. And a lot of people are starting to ask a lot of questions about how in the world that could be the case, and now it's being said that that this list is not real, and as a matter of fact, the list is a fabrication by Krampus. So there's a million different things going on with it, and it looks as though, as far as as far as putting a blanket over something and trying to cover it up, this is probably one of the worst attempts at it done possible. And there's a lot of people out there at the moment who are very unhappy about it. And this is starting to lose a lot of supporters for a certain base of people inside of the government. And this is creating a very unstable political situation. And for that reason, they are possibly going to be looking to take drastic actions either domestically or abroad to try and put down what is clearly turning into a firestorm at the moment, as a result of the poor handling of the situation. To try and make sure that we cover it in the most cleansed way possible. That's generally what's going on in the country. If you do not know, it's really hard to not know because it's pretty much dominating everything at the moment. And that's what's currently happening. So I hope that addressed that well in the most sanitized way that we can. And yeah, it's probably going to lead to drastic actions being made overseas, so that way all of the news stories change from talking about that to talking about something else. So though at least
I think the best what's the best way to say it? Krampus was on Santa's naughty list. Krampus does not want anybody to find out that he was on Santa's naughty list. Burgermeister came in and demanded that that Krampus release the Santa's naughty list. Krampus said no, and Burgermeister and Krampus had a falling out. And Santa's not around to say anything about it. So that pretty much sums up the whole thing.
yeah, it's interesting. And then on top of that, one of let's see, how do we describe it? One of the supposed heroes of the light or heroes of the truth's supporters or assistants.
Burgermeister.
Yeah, well, yeah, Burgermeister's probably the best way to put it. So Burgermeister came in, and now he's the mayor of Christmastown. And Burgermeister said that he's going to release Santa's list to the public if he is able to become the mayor of Christmastown. He becomes the mayor of Christmastown, and then Burgermeister's assistant, Clinsley, has told everyone that he saw Santa's list. And now they're saying that they've never seen Santa's list, and anyone who's saying that they ever said that is lying, although there's a video recording of Burgermeister's assistant saying that there is a list, Santa's list particularly. So it's not going well at all. I would be honest with y'all, this is probably going to end up being bigger than Watergate. Like, it just
Oh
being,
hell yeah, it's gonna
yeah.
be bigger than that.
Yeah, because that's, yeah,
This is already a firestorm.
And then, if y'all didn't know, there was a video of Santa Claus getting killed, the guy who made the list, and Santa Claus, killed, there's the semantics of that. Santa Claus died at some point inside of Santa's workshop, put it that way. So there was a video of it, and then they released it, and then it was found out that Burgermeister and Burgermeister's assistant and some other people ended up editing the video, cutting footage with Adobe Premiere Pro, and they saved about 4 times before they showed everyone. And now that's also causing a lot of questions as well, because they originally said that the camera that showed Santa dying just happened to cut off for a key moment when Santa died. But then it was shown that apparently that part of the video was cut out. So now there's a clear discrepancy in that part of the story as well. So, it's a developing story, and it's one that's not really looking well for anyone involved. Because it wasn't looking well for the past administration, and it's looking even worse for the current one. So it's probably the best lay of the land we can give y'all without actually saying the names of the people involved. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. That took a lot of creativity on my end to even come up with that premise for Matthew and me to work with there. But that's probably the best way we
It's
can explain it.
trouble in Christmastown, honestly. Santa and the Elves Workshop, not good, not good at all. North Pole Island, whatever you want to call it, not good. And really, honestly, I think it is going to be bigger than Watergate. And this is not political, folks. This is just merely looking at it objectively. This has the makings of one of the worst political crises the country's ever seen. I'm not sure if people have realized that, but it's snowballing right now, and it's not really reached a crux. But when it does, it's going to be very fast, and it's going to be very dramatic when it does. It's going to be very dramatic. Because Watergate was bad. It resulted in a president resigning instead of getting impeached. But this has the potential to be way worse than that, politically speaking. So I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but it's got me a little concerned.
Yeah, it's quite concerning. And some people are saying, "What, are you not allowed to talk about?" No, we are technically allowed to talk about it. In this country, you have freedom of speech. You can generally talk about anything as long as it's not breaking a law where you're yelling like fire in a theater, as an example. But the issue is that with something like this, And considering right now, not to get too much into the domestic situation or what my opinion is on it, there is the chance that there could be some reprisals made about people who exercise their freedom of speech to speak about this matter, considering that there's a lot of people with common interests at this moment to probably keep the story under wraps or to completely bury it. It's not entirely out of the question that speaking about that, quite frankly, with the clear facts or at least deductive reasoning that could easily be said, that you could be guaranteed your safety if you did that. So we're trying to go about this in the most cleansed, PG way possible, because to be honest with y'all, we've got some concerns that people who are out there right now, who are speaking about this quite openly, they might end up having some undue attention from Burgermeister here in the future in Christmastown, because they don't really want them talking about doom and gloom and happy Christmas land. That's kind of the reality of what we're thinking might be happening. So we'll have to see.
But bottom line, though, I think that's why I personally believe the odds of Ukraine being funded to the max is going up dramatically. And I feel I've said this like for 3 nights in a row. I know people are gonna be like, "Oh my God, he's saying the same thing again," but I really am saying the same thing again because it really does apply here. Domestic political issue equals external support going crazy when it comes to supporting wars around the world, and you're going to see Ukraine, which is right now an underfunded war, because the U.S. Really stepped out of supporting Ukraine a hell of a lot in the last months. You're going to see them get ramped up dramatically. That's my guess. Because you're going to see basically a distraction from this crisis that's about to happen here. Also, you could see a big distraction in Iran as well coming up very soon. And in my opinion, I would say that's not necessarily a bad thing because Ukraine needs to get funded. They have to defend themselves against Russia. And also, we have to tend to the Iran situation as well. So it's good that those things would be happening. It's obviously not good what's happening to cause it. That's horrific what's causing it. It's a reason to cover things up. But, it is going to advance our foreign policy interests in a good way, I guess is the silver lining, but it's for all the wrong reasons.
I hate lists, and lists hate me. Either they are going or I am going, and I am certainly not going, Clintonsley. Now write this down. Like, man,
difficult responsibility.
When you are the number one cover-up maker, that's me. Like, it's a man. Have it known throughout the land from sea to sea. There will be no more list makers for the king. Have all of the social media shut down. Have them all arrested, or something. Anyways, I'm just kidding.
Habeas corpus today.
Oh man, but anyways, beyond all of our Christmas nostalgia, I love Christmas, by the way. But anyways, beyond all of our Christmas nostalgia, Christmas is my favorite holiday, if y'all didn't know. And the 4th of July is also one of my favorite holidays as well. It's right up there with Christmas. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. But I hope y'all enjoyed our little musical there.
Indeed. But anyways, jumping into our next one, we actually have a super chat this time from Jenna, last name Tolls once again, who puts in a 10. And they said, I can't read that one off either, but thank you very much, Jenna, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the support and helping the channel keep it running. Unfortunately, we couldn't read it, but your support does make this channel possible and helps us keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we are now back into the live chats.
All right, so back into our live chat questions. This one is going to go to the original Mr. Wiggle, who said, what if we provided a tactical nuke to an uninhabited area of Iran, along with a statement of, don't try it? What would the reaction be?
It would probably be international condemnation, because there wouldn't be a doctrinal justification to the use of a tactical nuclear weapon in that instance, because generally nuclear weapons are understood by every country but North Korea to be used defensively. So if we used it in a first strike like that, that would actually be viewed most likely with international condemnation of the action. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I would understand off of how that would generally be viewed. But I can't guarantee that's the way it would be viewed. That's just how I would generally understand it with how everyone's viewed that sort of a thing in the past. But with that, hope that does address that well. Also, if y'all didn't know, that song that we were pretending to sing there that we like parodied, it actually comes from a specific Christmas movie. I think it's called Santa Claus is Coming to Town. I've got to show it to y'all because y'all have to get the reference if y'all don't know.
Who's the warlock in that movie? There was the warlock in it. Who's
the
warlock?
Yeah!
Steve Man.
Oh no!
Oh no! Oh no!
This one, it's this movie right here. I'm sure y'all have to
Yeah,
know it
There's
now.
Burgermeister.
Yeah, so the song that I was singing was sung by this guy. Like he says, "I hate toys, and toys hate me. Either they are going or I am going, and I am certainly not going, Klinsley. Now write this down." And then it goes into like a song, and it's one of the best songs ever because we quote it all the time. You can make any parody of it like you want. Like we like no joke. We've done one behind the scenes like to ourselves to just laugh. We've done one for like Xi. We've done one for Zelensky, Putin, everyone. Like we've come up with lyrics for each of them, but it's hilarious. But it's a great movie though. But it's hilarious to parody the song. Oh man, like dude, like right now, how do I do a cover up? It's easy. You put one foot in front of the other, and soon
Look, it's
you'll
the
be
deep state.
and soon you'll be sending out the feds. Then you put one foot. Wait, no, man. Wait, hang on, man. You put one warrant in front of the other. Oh man, but this was a great movie, by the way, folks. I think this was a Rankin Bass movie. They were famous for. It was.
Yeah, it was.
Dude, Rankin Bass was legit. They made the best Christmas movies ever.
And Hanna-Barbera, they were fantastic of their era too for cartoons.
Yeah, but let me look Rankin Bass movies. I got to show you all these because they made the original Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. They also made, let's see, The Little Drummer Boy, which I never watched, but I've heard about it. They also made Frosty the Snowman. So literally every Christmas classic known in this country was made by Rankin Bass. And what's really interesting is that the stop motion puppets were actually made in Japan, because the Japanese, I believe, were the only they had one of the only companies at the time that did this stuff. And these puppets are actually made out of wood and paper mache and stuff, so they really didn't survive all too well. But some of the Rankin Bass puppets actually still survived in the modern day, and they are really sought after. I think one of them, I think it was a Santa and Rudolph set of the puppets, because there was very few of them that were made, but it was generally intact and survived in almost mint condition. It was sold for, I think, millions when it went up for auction last time. It was like $3.5 million for the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the original Santa that was used in the Rankin Bass movie.
Yeah, who's Rudolph? You know the red nose thing getting too much attention. Who's Rudolph?
Oh boy, I don't know. Who would it be?
I don't know. I don't know. I think right now there's candidates for Rudolph. I think the top candidate at this point might be Bongino.
Oh no! Bongino, with your nose so bright, won't you explode? The whistle blows tonight, but it's bro, it's good. Man, it might become venison. You know, like I don't know. Oh look, it's Hagset.
No, man, he wasn't drinking.
Oh man, wait a minute. Hold up. No, the snowman. Dude, the snowman. Bruh.
Snowman, I don't even know. Like, the Snowman's too pure to be anybody that's a politician, honestly. Like, I don't think you could assign him a politician role.
Honestly, the snowman was pretty goated. Hermie! You know, dude, who would he be? Who would he be?
Wait a minute. Who'd that guy who talked like that? It would probably be like, hold on a second. Let me give it some thought here. I don't know if I'm always going to know this guy, but it'd probably like Peter Navarro or something.
Oh man. Oh look, Matthew, it's the Island of Misfit Toys. Man, who would those be?
I don't really know if there would be a good one for that one.
I don't know either. But still, these movies were classics. I love these movies. Especially like Frosty the Snowman was also like a great movie, but also a memeable movie for some moments of it. Like when the magician was on the bottom of the train and he said, "I'll get that hat. Think nasty. Think." No, like we quote that one because it's like, what the hell was the context behind it? That was so sus sounding.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that phrase about that right now. That's a bad phrase. Don't think nasty.
Man, honestly, you
bad
don't.
Phrase.
Yeah, bad phrase, bad dog. But anyways, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Jenna, last name Tolls once again, who put in a 10 and said, Mrs. Claus is a Russian spy, I guarantee it. I don't know, but Enforcer, what say you?
You never know, Jenna, last name Tolls. You never know. I don't know, though, but maybe I do. I cannot confirm nor deny. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Just Some Space Cowboy, who puts in a 10 and said, people focus a lot on Russia as they're taking a more active role in current events, but we cannot forget about China and the role they're playing in the war in Ukraine and their goals in the Pacific.
And I would certainly agree. And I think the United States can't get tunnel vision. And while Ukraine is the ongoing conflict, we have to keep an eye on the Middle East and also East Asia as well. I would definitely agree with you there. And so a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, by the way, I got to thank everyone for enjoying our jokes because I saw the chat was laughing at a lot of them uncontrollably. But I'm happy to see y'all are enjoying the jokes because we never know if they land or not. The only way we can tell is the reactions from the chat. But anyways, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to K. Muggsy, who puts in a 2 and said, Putin must go.
Putin must go. You go. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support, and I'd have to agree with you. He has to go. So big thanks to you for the support. And with that, I think we're back into the live chats now.
And yes, back into our live chat questions. This one goes to Growing Big Buds, who says, who will run North Korea after Kim Jong-un dies if he doesn't have a male heir and if women aren't considered equal in North Korea? His wife and daughter won't be able to rule or run. Well, the catch is, though, Kim Jong-un is considered a progressive in North Korean politics. That's hard to believe, but he is considered a progressive. He's done a lot of things that are considered not traditional in North Korean politics, and part of that is sort of, well, you know, I've got to pick my language carefully with this because, you know, let's see, sort of like preparing.
I'll say it, Matthew, in a way that explains it. He's progressive, as in Kim Jong Un said, "Hey, women are like real people too, maybe," and so you know that's
pretty much.
Yeah, that's kind of why he's considered progressive. Not really progressive in the West at all. Like that's usually considered backwards ass, like even what he's saying right now. But in North Korea, that's actually considered to be pretty forward thinking. So you know that's.
But he also, Sir Guy said his daughter is being groomed for the position. Not his daughter, his sister is. His sister is going to be the one who's going to be the highest in the ranking or the list to be taking over North Korea, which is Kim Yo-young. That's the ghoulish-looking lady. She's going to be the one who might be taking over if a woman takes over. If a male takes over, then I have no clue who it's going to be at this point. It could be anybody. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I think it's going to be his daughter because they've never gone sideways in the line of succession to like a brother or sister of whoever's died. It's always their direct descendant, and whichever one was selected. And I think Kim Jong-un only has the singular daughter. So I think it would be her. Now, Kim Yo-jong would still play a significant role in running the government, much like she is right now under Kim Jong-un, but his daughter would probably be the forefront voice and face of the country, while Kim Yo-jong pretty much ran everything in the background. That's what I think would happen, because she's pretty much already doing that now for the most part.
Let's see. Kim Jong-un's daughter. Let's see something here. That's Kim Ju-ae. Let's see here. I'm trying to get an image. I'll be honest with you. You know, they ruled a lot of people out when they picked Kim Jong-un. They ruled out Kim Jong-nam, which was another possibility. Kim Jong-nam was considered too sloppy to be in charge of North Korea, and generally he didn't want it. He wanted to live a free Western life. He didn't want to be under the gun like that. So Kim Jong realized that his brother was making wild statements, so he went and killed him in Kuala Lumpur airport and had the women smear nerve agent on his face, which took him out. So I think the daughter here might not be suited for the position. She doesn't appear to look like she'd be a brutal leader, and you have to be able to do brutal things to be the leader of North Korea. You can't just be, you basically have to be a gangster, basically, to be a North Korean leader. And I'll be honest, the daughter doesn't look like she wants to be a gangster, just from my initial impression. But maybe she's got that dog in her. I don't know. But, you know, I doubt it, because it takes a specific person to be able to be as brutal as Kim Jong is to lead the country.
But then again, at the same time, though, Kim Jong-un, when he was a kid, he didn't look like a brutal cutthroat. He looked like just some guy. Like, you know, like he was, like, at least from the pictures in Switzerland, he was just like some dude. And she's about the age he was when he was in Switzerland. So I think she might end up being it. Because Kim Jong-un was considered by Kim Jong-il to be generally incompetent. Like he called Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-nam both blockheads. He said, my sons are blockheads, but my daughter, Kim Yo Jong, she's actually, she's actually pretty sharp. But he still ended up picking Kim Jong Un. So I think Kim Jong Un will pick his daughter for the role of succession. But Kim Yo Jong will take on the role after he dies, because no one will be around to stop her, as pretty much being her key advisor if she's not executed. And Kim Jong-a may not execute Kim Yo Jong because she might realize that she has a lot of power in the Workers' Party of Korea at this point, and pretty much could usurp her and overthrow Kim Jong-a if she wanted to. So I think that might be how it will work. Is that it would almost be like a dual emperorship, like they used to have in Rome, where you'd have the two consuls of Rome. It might be something like that, where you pretty much have the two leaders of North Korea. Kim Jong-a is the foreface, and then Kim Yo Jong is the real heavy lifter who's doing the work in the background.
It could be that way. It could be. With Kim Jong-un, the person who is his right-hand man or right-hand woman is Kim Yo-young. She is currently the right-hand, assistant, basically, who basically runs the whole operation. Kim Jong-un is obviously the face of it, and he makes a lot of decisions. But Kim Yo-young is being placed as the second in charge, basically, in an unofficial capacity to a large extent. I would say she honestly has, the ability to lead the country. Now, she doesn't really have the charisma to lead the country. I will say that. She's more of like a taskmaster and like a person that gets it done than necessarily a charismatic front man of the country, because she doesn't actually look very endearing. Just looking at her in this picture right here, she looks quite brutal. And that would be a daily reminder to the people of how brutal the regime actually is to see this lady right here in charge of it. So maybe a softer face like the daughter would do it. But Kim Yo-young is so brutal and so vicious that she might want to take the daughter out to be in charge. She might be like that.
Also, it's Kim Yo Jong. You're saying Kim Yo Young. I was like, Kim Yo Young. What's up, Young? But
I just say Kim Yo-young. It's just easier to say that.
Kim Yo Jong. It's so hard. Honestly, it's so hard to say the names because it's like Kim Il Sung, Kim Jong Il, Kim Jong Un. Like you can almost turn it into a song, like the ABCs. Kim Il Sung, Kim Jong Il, Kim Jong Un, Kim Yo Jong. It's like you can just keep going. Like it's a very tough thing, their names. But beyond that, I think she is most likely going to end up being the next leader of North Korea, or at least the technical face of the country, because the kind of position that Kim Yo Jong is probably happy with, she already is in. I believe she's the chairman of the Workers' Party of Korea right now, or like the vice chairman, which is literally right below Kim Jong Un. So she's pretty much already running the country, and Kim Jong Un just gets to be the face of it. So I think that would be the same position she would be in with the daughter, most likely.
Could be. It's just that North Korea is entering a period of time where they're really getting closely aligned with a country at war, which is Russia, and also they're trying to do this weird thing of like building water parks. They're trying to make North Korea seem like a paradise. And I have no idea why they're trying to do that, because it's still a closed off hermit kingdom. And unless they're planning on opening the borders and letting people come in like a normal country, which I don't foresee happening anytime soon, then I'm not sure why they're doing all that, because the North Koreans came and enjoy the place. And like they're barely struggling. They're barely surviving day to day. So they're not going to the water park. They're going to work because they're barely surviving. So I don't know. I'm not really sure what they're planning on doing here. It's just kind of like they're kind of aimless, really. Like they're holding on to Russia and selling weapons to them, but they're aimless.
Yeah, something else that's weird. I'm trying to see, I got to point this out every time we see it. She looks nothing like Kim Jong Un. She looks just like her mom, and I keep on forgetting her name. But let me see. I think it was actually on the Wikipedia page. Yeah, this is her mom, Ri Sol-ju. Looks like a literal copy paste of her mom. Doesn't look at all like Kim Jong Un, and that's something that I think might be a little bit of an issue, because they gave Kim Jong Un plastic surgery to look more like the original Kim Il Sung. It's like you can't make either of them, whether it be Kim Yo Jong or Kim Ju-a. You can't make either of them look like the original Kim Il Sung, because they're so far off looking. Like you got this ghastly ghoul, and then you also have this lady and her daughter, which just generally look pretty nice. Like they don't have anything that's that shows a leader. They just like really nice people. It's like, so neither of them really look like they actually would be the leader of Korea. Like she looks like if you're left alone in the room, she might end up eating your head like a praying mantis. Like she doesn't look like she's at all related to Kim Il Sung. Because look at Kim Il Sung. When you look at him, you see let's see. Kim Il Sung. You see unadulterated. Well, not in that picture, but you see Oh my god. Bro, he looked
During the
ghastly.
Great Famine.
Bro, he looked ghastly. Let's see here. I gotta find the official portrait. That's not the official portrait. The official portrait, at least recently. Ah, yeah, here we go. See, he looks fat, happy. You know, like he looks like a nice guy, at least for the official portrait.
That is
Even
not his real teeth, man. That is not his real teeth. Those are like veneers or something.
bruh, he whipped out those veneers. Bruh, he
Man,
was,
those teeth are like those not even a natural color of teeth.
let's see if we can find. Bro, his teeth were not like that.
No, that was a lie right there. That's Photoshop or paint or whatever they have access to in North Korea. That could be sketchboard.
Bro, his teeth are not like that. Hell no. Bro, when he smiled, dude, you could pop ping pong balls through the openings. Like it's like, man, he did not have teeth. Well, they're right there because the
Man.
picture's grainy.
I think he might have sold toothpaste before he became the leader.
Bro, honestly, like goodness gracious. This is his signature? Nothing impressive there, but anyways, wait, is this the one from Mount Pektu? I think it might actually be. But anyways, she doesn't look anything like him. That's what I'm saying. Like, and the daughter doesn't look anything like him either. So you can't get like there's like a little bit of a mix here. Like at least with how they have him in the official portrait, he looks like this really happy fat guy who might actually lead a country. Like the daughter of this lady here, Ri Sol-ju, she just looks like, you know, she just looks nice, like sweet, like she just chit chat with you. Like she doesn't really look like facially she has what it would take to lead, at least by like the North Korean ethos. On the other hand, she looks like she just massacre you. Like she doesn't look like she could lead either. She looks like she'd lead a little too efficiently. Like you know, it's like that's kind of the issue between the two. It's like how do you balance that? I have no clue. But yeah, like I don't really know where they're going with this anymore. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that rabbit hole somewhat well. Also, by the way, if y'all are wondering where Solju was from, she was actually from like the Arabong Electronic Ensemble, which was the most popular band in North Korea at the time when Kim Jong-un married her. And of course, she didn't have a choice. She was told either you marry him or you go to a camp, and so she married him. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question here goes to Rebecca Bruce, who said, why are most U.S. fallout shelters not usable? I think, is that really true, though? Are most of them not usable? I know we have a fallout shelter in Huntsville, Alabama. We actually went and saw it one time. But that one is being maintained in the courthouse in Madison County in Alabama because there's a nuclear plant nearby that if there's an accident, you're able to go to the fallout shelter. So, I don't know. Like, are most usable? That's a good question to pull up.
Let's see here. Are most U.S. fallout shelters usable?
Oh, it says no. Most public fallout shelters in the U.S. are not usable in their original capacity. While some of the structures themselves offer radiation shielding, the supplies and maintenance required for long-term survival were discontinued after the Cold War. So they're there, it's just that they're not being maintained. So we could technically just start maintaining them again, and they should be good to go.
Also, I can show y'all the fallout shelter sign. There it is, the fallout shelter.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, so under this courthouse, actually. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. But apparently they're not usable, but it's due to a lack of supplies inside of the shelters. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Azem, who said, can Russia afford a war with NATO?
Russia technically could if it's a short one, but a long-term war they would not be able to afford or survive. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Snowy, who said, if the Houthis in Yemen still attack merchant vessels, would this not mostly affect China? Because China trades a lot through the strait.
Technically it would, but it won't really be that much of a major impact. They'll be able to mitigate it, especially if it's a shorter conflict. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And we got a question from X-Rats, who said, I've seen the UAV that is mounted with a grenade launcher. Have you seen that?
I have. It was used rarely, but I did see it. So yes. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hayes, who said, do you think that Russia still has most of their nukes working? Because I think they're mostly derelict, in my opinion.
I think most of them are derelict, but enough of them are working that they'd still pose a significant threat. So I hope that answers that well, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a question from John Anthony. He said, if all the detailed information about all the nuclear sites in Russia has been leaked, then why can't everybody just get together and preemptively shut them down?
Because that would be the beginning of a war, and a lot of people might not really want to get tied up into a war with the Russians, even if they would be able to win it easily and ensure that they also were not nuked. So I hope that addresses that well, at least from what I would understand as to why there would be apprehensions to that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a question here from David Tablet. And he said, if the Ukrainians were to hit the span again on the Kerch Bridge with a Neptune missile, could it take it out all the way?
I think so. I think it actually could hit. They could hit it forcefully enough that it would cause enough damage to shut the bridge down. So technically, yeah, I think they could take it out. It can be rebuilt though. No matter how much damage they do to the bridge, they can always just rebuild the affected portion of the bridge and then make it operational again. So it's really just a matter about trying to knock it out for as long as possible, but it will never be permanently knocked out. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Quantum Fighter. He said, what do you think? And this is what Quantum Fighter's saying. He said, what do you think of Tucker's call for citizenship to be withdrawn from Americans who fight for Ukraine? And it didn't say anything about those who fight for Russia. If he said that, because I personally haven't heard him say that, but if he said that, I think he ought to shut up. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, one, his opinion doesn't count. Two, that also completely violates the rights that a natural-born citizen has, because fighting for a foreign country doesn't mean that you rescind your citizenship. You're still a citizen of the country. So I would say it doesn't really count what he says. Most of the stuff he says is absolutely stupid. And I generally would know because if I'm looking at the ratings here, yeah, let me look at the ratings. Let's see here. Did he pop up? Did he pop up at all? Damn. Well, if he popped up, he's not on up there. He's on down there. Let me check this really quickly.
What are you looking at, the ranking list?
Yeah, I'm looking at the ratings here. I'm trying to see where he ranks.
The ratings were spectacular. We had never seen any ratings like this before.
I mean, hell, we're hitting in the top 50 in the country every day. Let me go check the day before that. Dang. Oh, dang it. Dang it. Hold up. Let me go to the day before that. Let's see here. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, so I'll show you this really quickly. So this is us right here. That's the Enforcer channel, number 39. This is on the 11th, because apparently he wasn't on yesterday. But this is where we were in the rankings yesterday. We were number 39. You know, speaking our common sense, our good judgment, logic, all that. And down here at number 48 was him. So as far as his input, it apparently weighs in a little less than ours at this point. So I would say, you know, like, does it really matter what he says? Not really.
His opinion actually carries a lot of weight still, which is a little bit disturbing to me because, you know, not that. Now, here's my thing. I don't like hate Tucker as a person. Like, you know, everybody's got a right to say their opinion, but the problem is though, Tucker has said things like he went to Russia. He did an interview with Vladimir Putin. He also went to the Russian grocery stores and misrepresented the prices in the grocery store because he didn't give the full picture, in my opinion. He's also I think he did an interview with the Iranian president or something. And generally, in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, it seems like he's giving a overall general theme of he's trying to lend like his like personal support to these foreign causes like the Russians, like pretending like the Russians are being victimized by the West, and also trying to pretend like the Iranians are being victimized somehow as well, when clearly that's not reality. I just view him basically as a clickbaiter. He's someone who just is a contrarian just to be a contrarian to get clicks and views, and that's not, in my opinion, being a real journalist. That's just being someone who's chasing the bag, basically, and trying to say whatever you can to keep a very naive audience at your behest. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes he says things that actually they actually kind of do hit. Like, there's a point here and there, but I mean, it's like a point out of 100. Like 1 out of 100 is his batting odds. I mean, that's a pretty damn batting odds. Most of the time, he has some of the most dog shit takes I've ever heard, and I don't really know who he is as a person, but you know, like, you know, I can't know him as a person. Do I really care to know him as a person? Not too much, honestly. Like, not dissing on him. I'm not trying to make it personal or anything, but at the same time, as far as my interests in the country are concerned, I find the guy to take a lot of contrarian opinions that not are just contrarian, they're practically statements supporting and sympathizing with enemies of the nation or enemies of the republic. And I'm not really a big fan of that sort of stuff. I'm not really a big fan of making it sound like the Iranians are good people that are our friends when they're clearly not, or the Russians are our friends and they're clearly not, or supporting the idea of bringing forward an authoritarian government because democracies are weak. Those sorts of things, in my personal opinion, I find to be un-American. And if there was a House Un-American Committee, like there was back in the 50s, I would generally say that he should be at the top of the list to be investigated for un-American activities. Like, just personally saying. Not that I would like to see a House Un-American Committee return, but if they did, I feel like he should be at the top of the list. Because I've never seen anyone who calls himself a patriot go out of their way to try and glorify their enemies and demonize the United States for viewing them as our enemies, because they treat us like they're our sworn enemy. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so that's what I generally say. It's like it's a little bit stupid for him to say this sort of stuff as well, because like the guy is so dead set on being a contrarian. Putin even took the time to clown on him in the interview. Like, if you watch it, clearly was clowning on him the whole time and treating him like a joke. And then he's still going to sit there and act like the Russians are good people, or that the Russian government is a good country and Putin's a nice man. It's like he even clowned on him. It's like you've got to be completely detached from reality at that point, to keep saying the Russians are good people, and then to also completely misrepresent the situation in Russia. Like, look, the groceries are 3 times cheaper, and not even mention that the average Russian makes 5 times less than the average American, meaning that their grocery bills are higher than ours on average, even with those reduced prices. It's those sorts of things that I don't really like, and I also don't like this odd push that he has. He has this really strong desire for authoritarianism, which is incredibly clear, because he always goes to these dictatorships, like Bukele, Putin, Khamenei, so, any country like that, and he'll sit there and say, look how much better it is in these countries, and he always makes sure to highlight that it's an authoritarian dictatorship. And, well, yeah, it's an authoritarian dictatorship, and your democratic rights have been stripped, but look at all the benefits. And that's something that I do not agree with at all, is someone advocating for for everyone's common democratic rights to be stripped in this country, which is an age-old tradition of our country, specifically in the modern age, just for the fact that the groceries might end up being a little cheaper. And it's like, like at
And
least
the bad part is, I'm not even sure if he believes it. Like, that's the part I'm not even sure about. Like, when he goes and makes statements, and once again, this is all in my opinion. I know some people may interpret it differently. Some people might think, well, he didn't really portray it that way. This is just the way I viewed it personally. When he went to Russia and started like pretending like, oh, the groceries are cheaper here, like that was a whole meme for a long time about how he went to like a Russian grocery store and saw the cheap groceries and how they were so much cheaper than America. How come Russia can do it so well? When he didn't even bring up the fact that the Russians don't even make enough wages to really afford the groceries he's looking at. It's like, does he really even believe this? Because I'm like, he's not dumb. I mean, what's his education? I mean, let's see here. Tucker Carlson, education. So yeah, he's educated. He's got some degrees here under his belt. So it's like, I don't understand. Like, I'm not even sure. Me personally, I just think that he's one of these people that just says what he thinks his audience wants to hear, and he positions himself as someone who has the knowledge that nobody else has. He's the outlier in the commentating field. He knows something that these other commentators doesn't know, and it's usually whatever is the opposite of what the other people are saying. It just seems like that. It just seems like a shtick.
And also another thing, when you add things together, it doesn't add up at all. Like, just speaking about him and his statements that he's made and putting them together, let me put some pieces together for y'all, and this is why I just don't really agree with the guy, especially on the idea of authoritarianism. So the guy says we should have authoritarianism, and when he was saying that, and when he was like, look, in Russia, yeah, they have a dictator, but the groceries are cheap, and look, they have a dictator down here in El Salvador, and they have Secot and everything, and yeah, it's a human rights violation and all that, but at least there's no crime anymore. Like, let's all go in for these authoritarian dictatorships. They're just the craze these days. And he says this stuff, and it was clearly like the way he was saying, and not saying that this is representing an official political party out there, but the way he was saying that it was in a clear slant to go, this political party clearly should start to pretty much form the country into a dictatorship, an authoritarian one, and crush its enemies domestically and just run the country with an iron fist. That was generally the metric that he was going up with. Now that this whole thing with Santa Claus and the Christmas list has come up, and now he doesn't like the way it's going in his opinion, now he's not really for the people he said should be running the country almost as a dictatorship. And it's like, there you go. That's that gold-plated turd that comes with a dictatorship, is that the people you want to become, the people you want to have to become dictators, like every other person in the world, are not great people. Like none of them are. Like no matter who you vote for, they're not great people. They're people like everyone else, and they're flawed, and they have issues. And once you get those people into a position of power like that, and you advocate for something like that, and if it actually did happen, I'm not saying it did, but if it technically did happen, now that person's in charge, you can't get rid of them, and now you know who they really are. And for example, he wouldn't even be able to make the statements he's making right now, because he was all for the guy who's in the office right now until just a few days ago. Now he's totally against him, apparently. But he wouldn't even have that option to do something like that in Russia or China, in these authoritarian dictatorships he's always avidly supporting for, because he would have 2 bullets in the back of his head, and he'd be dropped off in a children's playground in Washington, D.C. for the news to talk about tomorrow, and say, oh, it was, he offed himself, or, he fell out of a window, or something like that. It's like, he wouldn't even have the liberties or the rights to be able to criticize the government he's criticizing right now if he lived in one of those very dictatorships. So it's like, maybe he ought to understand, like a whole bunch of goofy Americans don't understand these days, that just because other countries have dictatorships doesn't mean that's what America should do. America is America for a reason, and the reason why we're successful is because we've been doing things the American way, with our American mindset, for 250 years at a minimum as a country, and we should continue to do it that way because it's done us well so far, and if the system's not broken, why fix it? And as far as I see, it's got some flaws and it's got some issues, sure, like every system does, but as long as we're diligent, like I've always been saying on the stream over the past days, and you vote properly, instead of just voting for the singular party every time, the country will eventually fix itself of the errors it has right now, and will have new challenges and issues to deal with tomorrow, but the country will still succeed, the citizens will still succeed, and the nation will still be on top by the next day. That's really my 2 cents on it. But as far as his opinion on it, considering that he's polling 10 points lower in the ratings these days than we are in America, I really don't care, because we actually have a larger voice these days in the country than he does. So with that, I hope that does address that well. I never thought we would come to the day that I would say that we have a larger following than most of the political pundits that I knew growing up, but we've made it to that day, and I think that this is the way forward for the country, is the kind of mindset that we have. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Father Dev, who puts in it too. He said he comes from the mainstream media.
And I would have to say, he does. Oh, he does. But still, a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, so this one goes to Dalton, who said, when do you think we'll see a tactical nuke be used? And thank you, and LSA.
And I would say, hopefully, you will never see one used. I'm not really a big fan of the idea of nuclear weaponry being used, but if it was to ever be used, we'll most likely see a tactical nuclear weapon used in Europe if the Russians start a major conventional war with NATO. That's generally what I'm thinking at this point, because there's really no other way for anyone to doctrinally justify the usage of a nuclear weapon, unless if it was to be used in a defensive manner. And the Russians could try and justify, especially if they're getting beaten back heavily by NATO after a couple of weeks of fighting, that there's an existential threat to their state. They could use a nuclear weapon. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for all of y'all tonight. We had 14.7 thousand people here at the peak, and over the course of the stream, 142,000 people have watched it. We are massively appreciative of y'all's time, and of course, we greatly appreciate y'all for continuously coming to this show and choosing it to be your primary source of news. And so with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And if we have enough news to cover, we will be making a short war video in the middle of the day tomorrow. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, long live the Lee Spring Army, long live the Republic, and of course, the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight. And a big shout out to all 142,000 people that were here by the end of the stream. And we'll see you all tomorrow on the stream and the video. So be sure to join us for that. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hear 'em Slava, get some rest, and good night.